Yes.
Is the screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
sir.
you. Okay, thank you.
Sir, we'll wait for more 5 minutes and we'll start.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Yes, sir. A very good evening to all. I, �Ῥ𝐺 from Team Just Agriculture, warmly welcomes you all to the second session of this 21 days international training cum workshop program on Agriculture 3.0, a futuristic approach towards smart agriculture and sustainable urban farming, embellished by the presence of dignitaries and respected personalities. This program is jointly organized by Just Agriculture magazine and Agro-Environmental Education and Farmers Welfare Society. The magazine has a readership of more than 1.5 lakh in India, which makes it a credible platform for researchers, students, and scientists to share their ideas on latest innovative topics. AEEFWS Society, on the other hand, aims at enhancing livelihood opportunities for more than 1 million farm households in the country. Over to this, I would like to congratulate Dr. DPS Badwal sir, organizing director of this program, CEO and founder of Just Agriculture, the magazine, for organizing such a wonderful program with 7 global partners, 5 co-organizers, which are 𝑉NMKV Pabani, NAHEP, Bidhan Chandra Krishi Vishwavidyalaya, West Bengal, Utkarsh Agri Incubation Center, PDKV Akola, and more than 15 knowledge partners, including various central government and private institutions of agriculture. Now, taking the program to our next segment of the session, I would like to invite our guest of honor, Mr. Peter Nyating. But before we begin, I would like to take some time to introduce him. So, Mr. Peter is a renowned expert in smart agriculture and sustainable food systems, with a vast experience in developing and implementing successful smart agriculture solutions for communities, farmers, and non-governmental organizations. Besides being the lead trainer and coordinator of the African Association for Vertical Farming in Kenya, Peter also chairs the African Association for Vertical Farming Youth Chama Forum, which is an initiative that brings techno-savvy youth of Africa under one digital platform to capacity building, innovate, and enhance food security in the continent, while empowering them to become self-sufficient. Peter's endeavors, supported by his associates, have seen him reach thousands of youth and women and communities across the continent, fully empowering them with smart agriculture solutions, creating jobs, and boosting their incomes. So, without wasting much of time, I would now welcome Mr. Peter to deliver his talk. Please, sir, this session is all yours now.
Okay, thank you for that amazing introduction. My name is Peter. I'll be your facilitator of organic hydroponics today. I hope you will enjoy my class. Before I start, I hope I'm visible and I am audible. Kindly confirm.
Sir, you are audible, but you are not visible.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. So our course objective today is to understand soilless farming technology, to learn how to make, organic hydroponic nutrients, and to learn how to make natural plant hormone their sources. So module 1, as we start, I want to introduce you to soilless farming. So what is soilless farming? Because hydroponics is a subset of soilless farming. What is soilless farming? Soilless farming simply means farming without soil, and instead a nutrient mineral solution is used. Okay. So someone is asking me, how can we grow crops without a soil? Before you start thinking about growing soillessly, you have to understand the functions of the soil and crops growth requirement. It is after doing that that you will know what you substitute, get your crops growing. So what are some of the functions of the soil for plants? One is anchorage. Anchorage is basically to support. 2 is water provision and retention. 3 is home of organic matter. Organic matter basically the source of nutrients to the plant. At the same time, the habitat for soil microorganisms. Soil microorganisms does a lot of things to the soil and to the plant. One of them is aeration. Another is converting the organic matter into nutrients. At the 5, we have now the aeration aspect. So the roots needs air to grow in a healthy way. What are the plant's growth requirements? Okay, plants need temperatures. Plants need light to make food, photosynthesis. Plants need water for support and for photosynthesis. And plants need air, that's oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen is basically used for respiration, carbon dioxide used for photosynthesis. And then now the 16 essential elements, which now act as a food or crops. So after knowing this, when now we are going to substitute the soil with a substrate, we are going to let our crops grow without any stress. So that's bring us to now soilless farming with hydroponics, having understood how we can substitute soil and the functions of the soil. So what is hydroponics? Hydroponics is a method of growing plants without soil, and by instead, we use mineral nutrient solution in a water solvent. And this is passed via the root system. Just like a picture you've seen, you are seeing in the slide, we're having a rough system, and you can see the roots, and there is a pool of water down here loaded with nutrients, and the roots are able to absorb the nutrients and are able to grow healthily. So what are some of the advantages of hydroponics? Hydroponics saves space, saves as much as space as possible when you're going upwards, because the space up here is unlimited. It saves water up to 95%. We are not losing water here through leaching. At the same time, our system recirculates the water. So the only water we are losing is only through the plant uptake and due to evaporation, and maybe the media absorption. 3, this is a kind of farming which is not seasonal. You can grow all year round without season because we control the environment under which we produce our crops. Then in these setups, use fewer chemicals in the sense that whatever we give our system is all measured. We don't exceed, we don't give too little. And that's where now the automation and the control comes in. There's no weeding. The substrate that we are using is clean, and also the condition under which we are producing at is controlled. This is a kind of system that is tolerant to environmental hazards like floods, mass of pests and diseases. only because we are using controlled environment agriculture. We are able to control all these. The plant grows faster. How does the plant grow faster? Before we, for example, we agree to, or we decide to grow lettuces, we have to measure the growth parameters and the aspect that the lettuces require. What are the ECs? What are the temperatures? So we give it more of the optimal temperatures and the more nutrient solution. And that as a result, the plants take all its energy focused where it's required, for example, the leaves, as opposed to now fighting diseases, trying to develop the roots as a result of poor soil structures. Then through this setup, through this technology, our plants are clean and cool. And then there's more of the control of the system now which we are using. But then hydroponics comes with a drawback. What are some of the drawbacks? It requires high skill expertise, so you must undergo training for you to grow efficiently. At the same time, there is high initial cost of hydroponics, so you have to take care of that. You have to know that. So what are some of the hydroponic techniques that you can leverage on when you want to farm hydroponics? You can use nutrient film technique, you can use deep water culture, you can use media-based technique. What is nutrient film technique? Nutrient film technique is a technology whereby a thin film of water is subjected via the channel, and the roots get access to this film of water loaded with nutrients, and then the water is recirculated. So we have the sump tank, which we are loaded with nutrients, and then we have our system. So the pump pumps the water loaded with nutrients from the sump tank into the system, and the excess goes back to the sump tank. So it's as simple as that. There's another technique that we are using is deep water culture. What is deep water culture? Deep water culture is a technology which embraces or looks like or mimic the water hyacinth or a swamp-like. So we make the plants buoyant on a pool of water loaded with nutrients, and then we subject it to aerations, which now we are using the aquarium pump. And as a result, the crops are able to grow perfectly. Nutrient film technique is best to grow leafy vegetables like lettuces and herbs. We have the media beds. This is a technique whereby crops are grown on a media, okay? And the media can use the mapotrophes, and all this is recirculated. Alternatively, they can use the grow bags, the word grow bags, just like you're seeing in the picture. Module 3, organic nutrients and management. So what are some of the nutrients that we can use in the hydroponic system? And where can we get these nutrients? So first, the nutrients that we require in the hydroponic system are divided into two: micronutrients and macronutrients. Micronutrients are nutrients that are required in large quantities. They are phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium. Micronutrients are required in medium quantity. Micronutrients are required in small quantities. They are copper, boron, iron, manganese, molybdenum, zinc, chromium, copper, sodium. And then there are these ones that are required in medium quantities, which are now the magnesium, calcium, and sulfur. All these are essential to crops as far as farming hydroponically is concerned. So what are some of the organic sources of nutrients in hydroponics? We can get them from the manures and compost. You can get them from green manures. You can get them from biofertilizers. So what encompasses the manures and the compost? This comes from the animals and crops and human waste. And the green manure mainly comes from the plants, which is now the green leaves and the stalks. And then we have the biofertilizers, which are now the effective microorganism, which is more of the EM. So what are some of the nutrient sources and their composition? That's now I'll be focusing on the micronutrients. So the macronutrients, we get them from the dry matter, you get them from the green matter, we get them from banana stems, wood, ashes. So when I talk about dry matter, what do I talk about? What do I mean? I mean dry grasses, I mean stalks, I mean roots. So from the dry matter, what are some of the nutrients that comes from the dry matter? We have the phosphorus and the carbon. So when you're making organic hydroponics nutrients, you have to include the dry matter to get phosphorus and carbon. Then we have the green matter. When I talk about green matter, I talk about banana leaves, for example, 𝘕𝑑𝑖ona leaves. You can get the lantana camara. And what are the sources here? Which nutrients are we getting here? We are getting nitrogen. Okay. Where do we get potassium? Potassium we get from the banana stems and wood ashes. So when you're making organic nutrients, which I'll now teach you as we go forward, you have to consider this and you have to know where your nutrients are coming from. And we have other sources and their composition that can also give us other nutrients. For example, we have animal manure and the garlic. So animal manure basically comes from the goats, chicken, and cows. And this not only gives us the nitrogen, but also sulfur in large quantities. At the same time, we have the eggs, okay? We have the gypsum, which now are the sources of calcium in our setup. And we have the banana stem, which contain broad spectrum of micronutrients, which such as iron, zinc, as well as nitrogen. So what is a procedure of making organic hydroponics nutrients? Okay, so we'll start with the materials that we require. So the material that we require are smashed dry leaves that have fallen. Okay, so you go to the garden, you go to the forest, you take your dry leaves and you put them aside. You have to have 50 liters of clean water, that is without chemicals. You have to find 50 ml of effective microorganism, which you can basically make from the rice bran and the milk. You have to have at least 4 kg of banana stems. You have to have brown sugar or molasses, which has an energizer, all sorts of energy. And then you have to have at least a bucket, and then a wood ash. Then you have your 𝘕𝑑𝑖ona, that should be 5 kilos. And then 1 kilogram of smashed garlic. And then 1 kilogram of organic fertilizer with tea. That tea is the trace elements. And then 1 kg of crushed shells, which now acts as a source of calcium. So what are the procedure now? What is the procedure? We chop 4 kg of banana stem and 5 kg of 𝘕𝑑𝑖ona leaves. And then we put the what you've chopped in 50 capacity bucket and add water to at least to 3/4. And then you add 5 kg of wood ash, chopped banana stalk, dry leaves, eggshells, and smashed garlic. And you stir just to make sure that it has mixed correctly. Then you add 500 grams of brown sugar in a separate bucket and you stir until all the sugar are dissolved. And you add into the where? Into the bucket. Why are we adding brown sugar? We're adding brown sugar to nourish the microorganisms act efficiently. Then you add 1 kilogram of organic fertilizer with the tea, just to strengthen your organic fertilizer. Okay, and 50 ml of effective microorganisms, that is the EM, that you've made from the rice bran and the milk. And you stir. And then you cover the bucket for 5-10 days as you stir occasionally. Okay. So After you've started, at the end of the 10 days, your fertilizer will be ripe. But then we'll have lost some of the bacteria which cannot respire anaerobically. So what do? We subject our nutrients to a Quirm pump and we pump oxygen into it for 10 days again. So as a result of that, we'll have attracted the microorganisms which could not withstand the anaerobic respiration. After doing that, your nutrients will be ready to be used. So what are the application rates? You dilute at the ratio of 1 to 10. So 1 part of your organic nutrients and 10 parts of the plain water. But this one, you will have to clearly check the EC as you apply to the crops as per the EC requirement of the crops that you are going to grow. And this application can be done as foliar spray, or you can fertigate in the hydroponic structure. So having made the hydroponic nutrients, we also require crop growth hormones. What are some of these crop growth hormones? What are some of these plant growth hormones? These plant growth hormones are classified with 6, which are auxin, cytokinins, gibberellin, abscisic acid, retardants, and ethylene. So why are we using these growth hormones? What are their functions in the system, in the hydroponic system? Now that we've made our hydroponic nutrients and we are able to use it to grow our crops, how will these growth hormones help us complement the production? So we have the auxin. What is the function of auxin? The auxins are normally present in young leaves. And their function is to promote flowering, fruiting, as well as cell elongation. We also have the cytokinin. The cytokinin are synthesized into roots. They're helping to stimulate the shoot initiations, cell elongation, as well as stomata opening. Then we have the gibberellin. So gibberellin are basically present in meristem and young leaves. And they are also used to stimulate stem elongation and also to facilitate faster growth. We also have the ascorbic acid, which is more of growth inhibitor. And we have the retardants, which more of impede growth without causing abnormalities. Then finally, we have the ethylene, which is contained in the tissues of ripening fruit. It is used to stimulate fruit ripening and breaking dormancy. What are the sources of these growth hormones that I'm saying? Because for you to get your optimal production, you have to complement your nutrients with these hormones. So for you to get the cytokinin, you have to get the coconut water. And then for you to have the auxin and the gibberellin, you will get them from the shallot. What's the shallot? The shallot is more of a young banana. You get it from a young banana shoot or a young banana bamboo. Then you also have banana ham, where we get the cytokinin. You have the auxin, where we get them from a sprout extract. Anytime that's a crop is sprouting, you can extract that. You can get hormones, auxin hormone from that sprout. We are also having tomato extract, where we can get the auxin, gibberellin, cytokinin, and ethylene. Seaweed gives us auxin, gibberellin, and cytokinins. And finally, the water hyacinth gives us the gibberellin. So for you to get these hormones, you have to bring all these together and make it. In the next slide, I'll teach you how to make these hormones. So for you to make these hormones, which consist of auxin, cytokinins, and gibberellin, have to collect the tools like blender, jerry can, machete, plastic, and rubber binders. Okay, and materials that you require are 200 grams of bamboo shoot, 200 grams of banana ham, 100 grams of sprouts, 100 grams of brown sugar just to help you nourish, and 50 ml of effective microorganism, which basically contains the microorganism which will nourish your nourish the entire thing and make it more effective. And then you have 2 liters of coconut water. All these are readily available. What is the procedure? Procedure of making plant growth hormones. That is the auxins, cytokinins, and gibberellin, because this is where all our focus are, beneficials in our case. So, number one, we blend the bamboo shoot, the banana ham, bean sprout, leaf shoots, and we chop them and blend them until they are smooth. 2, we melt brown sugar with water. Okay. Number 3, all ingredients, we put them in jerry can or a barrel, and we add coconut water and local organisms, and we stir until the jerry cans or barrels. We stir until it's properly mixed, and then we cover the plastic. We cover the top with more of a plastic thing, and we tie it well with a rubber. Okay. So we make sure that the plastic is not loosened so that the lid does not break during the fermentation process. Okay. That's now the reason why we're using the rubber to tie the top lid. Make sure that it's as tight as possible. So after doing that, every morning for 7 days, the lid is open and the ingredients are stirred and then closed again to make sure that it's mixed well. Then after 7 days, strain the ingredients to separate growth stimulant liquid and the dregs. So you will decant or sieve to make sure that you separate the two. Okay. The dregs you can use in your farm, just put it open or where the farm is, just put them, they will decompose and act as a compost. And then this liquid now will be in form of auxins, cytokinins, and gibberellin. Okay. And then this is stored in a tightly closed container. And now you're ready to use your hormones. Then how do you apply these hormones? You dilute hormones at the ratio of 1 to 10 and spray or fertigate to your crops. And they will help you with some of the benefits that I said before. Thank you. So I'll open the floor for questions. Anyone with a question on the presentation? Anyone with a question? Anyone with a question regarding the presentation that I've just done? Hello? Anybody with a question? Okay. So there's something that I want to probably expound on, which I've not touched based on mostly. I want to talk about the media that are used in hydroponic system. So what are some of the media that you can use in the hydroponic system? The media are divided into two. There's some media from organic sources, and there's some media from inorganic sources. The media from organic sources encompasses the cocoa pit, okay, the rice husk, the sawdust, okay, and then the medium from inorganic, the inorganic sources may be the rock pebbles and the pumice rock. So before you use this media, for example, cocoa pit, like, as you know, they are basically from cocoa pit are basically from coconut, and they are growing on the coastal areas or coastal region. And this means that coastal region is attributed to salts. So normally cocoa pit has a higher EC that it must be eliminated for it to be used in hydroponics. So what is the process of cleaning or treating your cocoa pit when you buy it? Once is that it has not been stabilized. So as you know, cocoa pit has salts, which are more fluoride salts and sodium salt. These must be eliminated for the crops to thrive. How do we eliminate this? We wash cocoa pit until it reaches an EC of less than 600. This may be 3 times, 4 times, or 5 times with plain water. As we wash, we also remove the salt, the sand residues, which may be inside the cocoa pit block. So after achieving the EC electrical conductivity, the more we wash, the more we dilute, the more we remove the salts. So when the EC, you have achieved the EC of 600, you store with calcium nitrate in a bucket with clean water. So for example, you may take a bucket of 50 liters, okay? So when you want to store, to treat it, like after washing, the final thing is to treat it for 12 hours with calcium nitrate. So what are the quantities of calcium nitrate you use to treat your cocoa pit? For example, if you're using 50-liter bucket, you put 40 grams of calcium nitrate, okay, in water. Then you put the cocoa pit inside the barrel, the 50-liter barrel or bucket. And then you leave it to settle for 12 hours for calcium nitrate to neutralize some of the foreign salt that might have remained in the system. So after 12 hours, you remove the cocoa pit, you squeeze the water, and you dry on a direct sunlight. After drying it, it's now ready to be used in your system. You make sure that you clean it, because calcium nitrate is more of chemical. And when we are doing organic hydroponics, we want to eliminate as much chemicals as possible. So you have to make sure that after you removing it from calcium nitrate, you have to wash it again with plain water, just to make sure that you remove the traces of calcium nitrate. At the same time, when you are growing pumice as a media, pumice comes from volcanic activity. And normally the pH of pumice is higher, 12, 14. But hydroponics require pH of between 6.8 to 5.8 to 6.5. So we have to lower the pH. How do we lower the pH organically? We use a vinegar. So we put the vinegar in a tank, and then we run the vinegar into the system. You can use a hose pipe, or you can fertigate using or maybe if you install your drip lines or fertigating system, just to lower your pH to the right levels. Thank you. So probably I'll go through the questions that have been asked, and then
Sir,
sorry? I'll go to the questions that have been asked. I think that I've seen there are a number of questions that have been asked here. Let me just go up. There are what number of questions? Someone is asking, is there any training program that is provided in India? No. Someone is asking, how can we use these organic compounds in hydroponics? Which crops are suitable for hydroponics? I'll expound that. Normally, when you're growing in hydroponics, you have to set, or you have to know what you're feeding your crops. And for you to know what you're feeding your crops in terms of nutrients, you use the NICI tester, which is more of electroconductivity, which is more of electrical conductivity of your nutrient solution. For example, when you're growing leafy vegetables or like lettuces are not heavy feeders. So we'll need between 800 microsiemens to 2000, depending on the stage of development. For example, when you've just transplanted your lettuces into your system, you'll work with 800 to maybe 1000. So as it grows, you progressively increase the EC levels until the stage where it's maturing, you can use up to 2000. Okay. At the same time, you have to check the pH. The pH is the amount of hydrogen ion in your system or in your water solution. So the pH of hydroponics, the ultimate pH is between 5.8 to 6.5. So anytime you're feeding your system, you have to check the pH. Or when you're having an automated system, you have to make sure that your system is within the required range. Someone is asking, does it take long for organic nutrients to dissolve in water? I would say it doesn't take that long, but it's not as fast as inorganic nutrients. Inorganic nutrients dissolve very fast, and at the same time, they're easily absorbed by the crops. So what you have to know is that when, like, I know India is more dominated with organic farming, as you are really promoting that, and organic hydroponic will be ultimate technology to substitute your soilless technology. And what you've realized, you know very well, is that while inorganic farming will yield more production, okay, at the long run, it will not be sustainable because of the environmental effect, another effect that, and our health effect that it comes with. That's why we are bringing an alternative of organic farming, which might not produce crops as fast as the inorganic way, but at the end of the day, we'll still have food in abundance. Someone is asking, hello, sir, which type of hydroponics is better, NFT or DFT or NFT? Each technique comes with its advantages and disadvantages. For example, when you're having an NFT system can give you more crops. The density is high as opposed to media beds. Okay, but then nutrient film techniques comes with a cost factor. It's more expensive than the media beds. Okay, so at the same time, different techniques are used to grow different crops. For example, when you are focusing on fruity vegetables like tomatoes, capsicum, cherry tomatoes, strawberries, okay, the cucumbers, the courgettes, you have to leverage on media-based technique, okay? But when now you are growing leafy vegetables, you can use deep water culture or rather rough system, or you can use the nutrient film technique. So it will depend with the crops that you're growing. All of them are working well. All of them gives results. Is hydroponics suitable for hot summer? Yes, just like I was talking about, hydroponics is not seasonal. You can use it in the hot summer. What will you do? What will you do? We are growing under controlled environment agriculture. When it's too hot, that cannot sustain, for example, lettuces, which are more of temperate crops. You have the fans to lower the temperatures, okay, in your farm. When you want to grow in winter, you have to heat your greenhouses, okay? So how is pH maintained? That's a pretty good question. pH is amount of hydrogen ion in the system. So when the pH is high, you use acid. There are organic sources of acid like vinegar. There's inorganic source of acid like phosphoric acid and nitric acid. So you can use these, whether you're growing organically or inorganically. But then when the pH is low, you have to raise it, okay? You can use, for example, when you're growing organically, you can use baking soda to raise your pH, okay? As a way of just making your pH is well. Is it totally organic? Yes, what I've taught today is totally organic. But then as I answer questions, I'll now base my explanations on organic and inorganic methods. Really, India need hydroponics. Really, India need hydroponics cultivation. Sure, you need hydroponics technology or cultivation because it's the future. The population in India is really high, and it's continuing to multiply. In the near future, we'll not have enough land rather to grow food. So we'll have to use some of the alternative technologies like hydroponics as the ultimate, just to save your the space that under which you're growing, to give you a lot of crops. So, and how is media bed different from soil? Media beds, we are using a substrate which is not soil. For example, I talked about the function of soil. We eliminate soil because soil comes with a lot of difficulties. The soil may have a poor structure. A soil may have pathogen, which impedes now the crop growth. A soil is prone to calamities like floods, okay, a drought. So we remove soil and bring alternative like coco peat and pumice we use to grow crops. So what is the function of pumice and coco peat in this setup? Coco peat is used more of water retention. It's like a magnet. It's all water like a magnet. And then pumice has a good root structure or good soil structure or good structure rather. So when you mix the two, they tend to complement each other and it gives the roots the best ultimate media. But then these things, this media is not a mass that you mix them together. For example, if you're using a maple trough, you can decide to use pumice only or rock pebbles only, or you can decide to mix them. When you're using grow bags, cocoa grow bags, what is recommended is coco peat. So you use coco peat, but you have to treat coco peat just like I trained you. How much yield can one get from hydroponic compared to conventional? The yield is mass. It's great. When you just do the right thing, you can get double or triple as compared to the conventional one. So does organic hydroponics give you best results like inorganic? That's a good question. Inorganic may be faster and high quality, but then organic will also give you best results. It may be slower as compared to inorganic because the nutrients availability for the inorganic one is the nutrients are so faster. So that means that the crops will grow faster. So for example, if you're growing lettuces, in organic hydroponics, you will probably harvest your crop within 6 weeks. For organic technology, it can delay with two weeks or 1 week, you see. But now the organic one will be more healthy, and in the long run, it's sustainable and it's affordable. So PM is asking, what will that media is able to supply all the nutrients required to the plant? Yes, it will supply all the nutrients required to the plant. Just like when the crops are growing in the soil, there's some crops that are growing naturally, and the natural aspects come from the organic matter. This organic matter are just from the leaves, and the leaves has the macronutrients and the macronutrients. These are the very things, the very nutrients that we have extracted and used in organic hydroponics. But then for organic hydroponics to be successful, so when you're doing deep water culture, you have to pump oxygen via aquarium pump. Question again, you have used mostly organic sources. How are you able to balance the application amount? Application amount, just like I said, the EC tester is something called electrical productivity, which tests the amount of nutrient solution in a certain solvent. So anytime we are applying our organic nutrients, you have to test the EC to check just the amount of nutrient solution that are dissolved. Sir, that's cool. Sir, can we get good yield comparatively as field? Can you compare with vegetable yield like tomatoes, brinjals? Yeah. This is something you can get. The yields are good. Which type of microbe can we add to the organic mixture during preparation of crop growth? We can make the effective microorganism via that's lactic. We can do. You can make effective microorganism, which you can make from the rice bran and what rice bran and milk. So what we basically do here is that you wash your rice, decant, and remain with the water of your rice. This is the water, the white like water. You cover and then you take it to the forest for 7 days. So after 7 days, you remove it and you add milk. You stir well, then you cover again. Then you store for another 7 days. So at the end of the 7 days, at the end of the 14th day, if you uncover, you will find a bran, a white bran. So the white bran you can use to feed your cows. And then the liquid that will be below is the effective microorganism. This has broad spectrum of organisms which are beneficial to your crops. So this one you can apply to your nutrients just to make it stronger, or you can spray to your crops. That's benefits, broad spectrum of benefits, from removing the foul smell to boosting your crop growth. Someone is asking here, how can I have practical training on hydroponics? I am Prince Justice Agingha Tonyi, Union from Cameroon. Which one is the cost-effective technique? What I would normally say, the most cost-effective technique is the media-based. Okay, to my side, according to my experience. Okay, but remember, the media-based, you can also do it vertically using an A-frame structure. So it's the most effective technique. So we can organize so that we find a training for you. Paresh, yeah, that's the name of Paresh. Okay, sir, please suggest some of the water-soluble fertilizer and their concentration. Sir, please suggest some of the best water-soluble fertilizer and their concentration. Okay. Oh, he has repeated. The water-soluble fertilizers are calcium nitrate, magnesium sulfate, okay, potassium nitrate. Those are the best, and they give you best results. Okay, please list out some of the crops grown through hydroponics. You can grow capsicum, you can grow cherry tomatoes, you can grow leafy vegetables like lettuces, you can grow eggplants, you can grow cucumbers, just a lot, actually all. But what we normally recommend, you grow as more profitable crops as possible, okay? Because hydroponics comes with its expense. So if you're going to grow cheaper crops, it means that your return of investment is not going to be okay. Someone is asking, plants need different micronutrients at different life stages, like boron at flowering. Yeah, sure. How will we manage it organically? Have to prepare different organic fertilizer? No. If you look at the recipe that I did, like for example, boron, we get it from more of the banana hams and banana stems and leaves, because it contains broad spectrums of micronutrients. So that's where you'll get it. So organic nutrients, you just have to balance what you feed it with. You have to balance that. Sure. If we fertigate organic nutrients, does it need filtering? Sure, you will need a filter. You will need a filter. That's something that you have to check. Why hydroponics? I have to choose instead of other techniques like aeroponics. Aeroponics is good, but it comes with its technicality. It's actually the most expensive technology, okay? At the same time, it needs more of skill expertise as opposed to these other things, okay? So for the start, you can start with hydroponics or aquaponics. And then as you advance, you do hydroponics. And hydroponics, I always see it's only famous with, it's common with when you're trying to multiply the yams, you are trying to grow potatoes, and also when you're growing vertically, you're growing lettuces or leafy vegetables vertically. Yeah. What is the negative to hydroponics? Just like I said, for you to do hydroponics, you have to incur the high initial cost because you're building this infrastructure. At the same time, if you don't have the skills, high skill expertise, you've not gone through enough training, your system may fail. What if the water we are using is salty in nature? That's a good question. Is salty in nature? You can grow your hydroponic system up to 3,000 EC. We are doing it in Africa. We are doing it in Kenya. We are doing it in South Africa. We are doing it in Tanzania. We're doing it. We did it in Burkina Faso. We did it in Congo. It's working. What you have to know is that when your initial EC is 3,000, and you want to feed your crops with 1,500 at a particular time, you take 3,000, you add 15, 1,500. So that is 4,500 EC. That's the EC that you'll be feeding it with. Alternatively, you are recommended to use the reverse osmosis technology to lower the salt residues or the salt content of which reverse osmosis for a smallholder farmer comes with its cost complications. Okay, sure. Another question, sir, yield quality status, please. What is the negative aspect? Sir, the yield is high. The yield is high. The yield is high. For example, when you are growing capsicum, red capsicum and yellow capsicum in hydroponic system, we are growing in the indeterminate variety. Indeterminate variety will give you at least, for the high yield OF1, will give you at least 10 kilograms, an average of 10 kilograms per plant. And this harvesting continues for 6 to 8 months for the indeterminate variety. Is there a pest project the hydroponics? It's minimal because the environment under which we are using is controlled. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello, sir.
There's one question that which type of hydroponics is better, NFT or DFT?
It depends with what you're growing. For example, if you're growing leafy vegetables, you need a technology that will carry as much as possible. Okay, so you can use deep water culture, or you can use nutrient film technique, okay, or vertical towers. But then when you're growing fruity vegetable, for example, you want to grow capsicum, you want to grow the potatoes, tomatoes, you want to grow the cucumbers, you'll have to use the media based. You can use the maple trough, you can use the cocoa bags. Sure.
Okay, thank you, sir. One more is there. How to prevent the development of algae in hydroponics?
How to prevent algae in hydroponics? One, algae grow as a result of light, more light. So in your media, you have to make sure that it's covered, prevent algae. Then alternatively, when you're growing inorganically, you can use hydrogen peroxide to kill the algae. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One of the participants has asked which method is cost effective and suitable for wide crops.
Just like I said, the media based technique, like the maple trough. I know the people. In my presentation, I showed you what a maple trough is when I was talking about the media based, and then you can use also the cocoa bags, the white bags. Sure. It is through these things that it's cost effective, and you can grow a variety of crops. You can use it to grow crops which are the leafy vegetables, and also you can use it to grow fruity vegetables. But when it comes to NFT or vertical towers, it's specific to leafy vegetables.
Okay, sir. So which type of microbes can we add to the organic mixture during preparation of crop growth regulators?
I talked about that. I'd answered that. I followed all the charts. I even explained how to make effective microorganism. That's the EM.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I followed the charts and I was answering one by one.
Okay, sir. I think we have done with the questions then.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for giving your valuable time and joining the session. And
Okay.
it was really a very interactive session from Team Just Agriculture. I once again thank you for joining this session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And for my contact, before I leave my contacts in the chat list so that whoever wants to talk to me, advices, we can link up. Okay.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Okay. And then just a minute, I'm just writing it. And then in LinkedIn, you can find me as 𝘵𝑡𝑒𝑟𝘺𝑒𝑛𝑔. That's my name, LinkedIn. I'm very active in LinkedIn. I just check the name 𝘵𝑡𝑒𝑟𝘺𝑒𝑛𝑔, and you will get to interact with me. So I think those are my contacts. You can WhatsApp, you can email, we can talk in LinkedIn. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you once again. Okay.
Thank you.
So moving towards our next session, I would like to welcome Diksha ma'am to take over the next session.
Thank you, Utkarsha ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, ma'am. So I will begin with the next session for today. Good evening to everyone present here. I am Diksha Pradhan, and I warmly welcome our guest of honor and the speaker of today's session, Dr. Sarabjot Singh Anand, Dr. DPS Badwal, Organizing Director of this training cum workshop program, committee members, and most importantly, all the participants of this 21-day event. A brief introduction of our today's speaker, Dr. Sarabjot Singh Anand. He is the co-founder and chief data scientist, Tatras Data, and also the co-founder of Sabudh Foundation. Sir's field of expertise is data mining, machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, algorithms, etc. He is also a self-confessed data geek who has been involved in the field of data mining since the early 1990s. Sir has also been known to derive immense pleasure in developing algorithms, applying them to real-life problems, and training a host of data analysts in the capacity of being an academic and data analytics consultant. Sir has also published over 90 academic papers on data mining while also working as an associate professor at the University of Warwick, and also had previous academic posts in the United Kingdom. So without any further delay, we will begin with our next session for today. You can start, sir.
Thank you, Diksha, for your kind introduction and invitation to speak at this wonderful event that you have organized. I hope I can be heard fine.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. So what I hope to do today is talk a little bit. It's an introductory talk because a lot of my folks from Sabudh are speaking in the rest of the workshop as well. And I didn't want to go specific on any piece because they will be covering the details later. But what I wanted to talk about today was to introduce the role of emerging technologies in agriculture, and give you some intuition for what we are doing, what is happening in the world around us, and also to give you some understanding specifically in emerging technologies. I'm going to focus on artificial intelligence, which is my area, and try and give you some intuition for why it is interesting and why it is important in the world today. So, unless you have been living on the top of the Himalaya, Mount Everest or wherever else, I'm sure you would not have missed the fact that there is a lot of talk today in media about artificial intelligence. So back in 2017, even, for example, so going back 5 years, there was an article about how Facebook shut down robots after they invent their own language. At the same time, Elon Musk, and who doesn't know Elon Musk, right? He's just bought Twitter, and of course, he did some amazing things with moving his satellites to continue communication with Ukraine after the Russian invasion. And of course, is behind the Tesla car and SpaceX as well. Now, Elon Musk has said, has warned us that there are killer robots that could unleash unbelievable terror if we don't, in some way, come up with ways of limiting the power of artificial intelligence. At the same time, he is also investing billions of dollars in this technology. So there seem to be two sides to this, right? One where it clearly adds a lot of value, but then of course there's a fear that it could cause all sorts of harm to the human beings as well. Some of you may recognize this person. Well, I'll let you know that he is the ex-world champion of a strategy game called Go. He retired a few years ago after artificial intelligence beat him. Go is a much more complex game than chess, and if most of you are probably too young to remember when Garry Kasparov was beaten by AI in chess. Well, it's taken almost 20 years after that for AI to beat the world champion in Go. And what is kind of interesting is the fact that the AI was not taught. The AI that beat him learned the rules of the game by practicing against each other and didn't have to have any rules implemented by software programmers for it. And what did the world champion say when he lost? He said, the moves that the AI were making. Last year, when I played them, I could understand why he was making the moves, or it was making the moves. But this year, it was godlike. I didn't have any idea what they were doing and why those moves were even relevant. And that's kind of, scary when you think about it. Some of you may have seen this YouTube video that has been doing the rounds probably for the last 5-6 years as well, called the Slaughter Bots. And it's kind of not a real recording of a real event, but it's very believable, right? So there's this person giving a talk, almost like, one of those TEDx talks, where he talks about this new weapon that they have created. And this weapon is a small drone that is the size of the hand, or the palm of a human being. And what it can do, he says, is fly at very high speeds, moving in random directions so that it can't be shot. So it has learned that it has to move in random directions while flying at high speed, because if it doesn't do that, the enemy can shoot it down. And it lands on the forehead of the person that it has done face recognition of and identified as its target. And it has a small amount of explosive in it, which can drill a hole through the skull and destroy the brain of the person. Now, when you think about it, this isn't that unbelievable, right? Our mobile phones can do face recognition. We use it every day so that it can recognize us. We don't have to put any password into it. And drones, of course, a little bigger than these, but small drones exist too, are flying around in most of our weddings, taking video of those occasions, right? Now, what is scary is that with these kind of weapons of mass destruction, why is it mass destruction? This person says for $1 million, you can buy a full aeroplane load of these weapons. And each one could be given a different photograph and can go and attack people. Now, in the hands of the government, you would hope that it is actually a good thing. In the hands of people who are, wanting to cause trouble, this is very scary, right? Because we can't shoot them down because they're moving in random directions and they're going ahead and attacking people. Right. And this is the kind of weaponry that Elon Musk warned us about. Right. Now, at the same time, however, we are seeing AI technology coming from the likes of Stanford University that can diagnose pneumonia better than radiologists, human radiologists can. We are also getting neural networks that or artificial intelligence models that can identify heart disease better than doctors. And people are asking the question, should human beings be trained to be doctors anymore? And the answer, of course, to that is, of course, they have to be. Our artificial intelligence has not reached a level where they can replace human doctors, right? But definitely artificial intelligence can be a great friend in scenarios like India, where, in rural parts of India, we don't have access to doctors. And so if we can do remote diagnoses of patients, that would be a fantastic thing. We could save lives, right? But even within more urban settings, we have a lot of differences in the quality of diagnosis done by humans, right? So we did a project a number of years ago where doctors were making diagnoses, but they were prescribing different medication. And which one is the right medication was a question that we were asked, right, to solve. And so if we can make sure that there is consistency in healthcare, that's another great application of artificial intelligence. And healthcare, not just of humans, but maybe also of plants, right? We're here to talk about agriculture, and I promise you I'll get there too. But, every living thing needs to be looked after, right? And so we are talking about human examples here, but you can very easily convert that to animals as well as to plants. Here is an example of a robot that is now being deployed in some shops in the US and Japan, right? And here is an example of even the very simplest of things that we do, our little pleasures in life, like ordering pizza, right? So this is Domino's are looking at these self-driving delivery robots that can actually have an oven inside them and could be cooking your order while traveling to your house and giving you a much better service because it's a very hot pizza ready and delivered to you. Or it could be a hot case keeping your pizza warm while it drives out to you. So these are interesting applications, but to make it very, very real, let's look at another really interesting application. And this is the application of using artificial intelligence to identify the three-dimensional folding structure of proteins, right? And this is a problem that human scientists have been trying to solve for over 50 years. And the accuracy of humans, in coming up with what is the structure of these proteins has not been very good over these 50 years. And why is it important? It's important because the protein's three-dimensional folding, like you can see here, determines the function. And so if we are trying to attack disease, for example, we must understand the folding structure of proteins to be able to utilize them for attacking these diseases. And so in fact, AI, and this is artificial intelligence that has been developed by the same folks that developed the algorithm that beat the world champion of Go. It's the same company that has created this algorithm that is now impacting healthcare. And it was actually a very important part of development of some of the vaccines for coronavirus also, right? So this is having a direct impact on us. And AI is not anymore just a technology that helps us get recommendations in Amazon or recommendations on Netflix. It's actually changing our lives. It's saving our lives now, right? And we can see here that the accuracy achieved by this algorithm AlphaFold in 2020 was around 85% compared to the closest human accuracies that were being achieved a few years earlier than that, which was sitting at 40%, right? So a huge increase in accuracy of a very, very important topic for humans. And some of you who have been following the AI area would recognize this person as being Geoffrey Hinton, one of the pioneers of artificial intelligence. And he, in fact, has made a claim that we should stop training radiologists now because AI can actually do a better job of it, right? So we are getting close to having real impact. And my understanding is that a lot of you are young students. I think you are very lucky to be living in this period of time because we are seeing some very exciting technologies. Artificial intelligence is one of those, but we are seeing some amazingly interesting technologies that are coming in. Artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and I know you're going to hear more about the Internet of Things later today as well, robotics, blockchain, and of course, quantum computing. And with this change in technology, essentially what we have is a situation where some of the jobs we were doing are becoming redundant to the world, right? And so there are going to be people who are going to lose their jobs. But this is not the first time that has happened, right? The Industrial Revolution also, we had mass unemployment as a result because machines started taking over work that humans were doing. And of course, humans are brilliant at adapting, right? If we didn't believe that, well, the last 2 years have taught us that we are brilliant at adapting. We have survived one of the greatest crises from healthcare in the last 2 years, fighting Corona, right? And so, what we have to do is we need to reinvent ourselves. We need to develop skills that we don't have, right? And what we can do as educators is to actually give skills to our students today that actually allow them to take on the world. There is no such thing as a job for life anymore, right? Because jobs are going to get automated, some jobs. So you're going to have to keep reskilling in the world. And therefore, what is very interesting is that some of the boards, the education boards in the West, like this one that I have taken this image from, called the IB board or the International Baccalaureate, say that the skills that are important for students to deal with the uncertainty, that is going to come because of these emerging technologies are these ones here. We need children to be risk takers. We've always aimed for human beings to be principled. That still remains true. We need people to be thinkers. We need them to be open-minded. We want them to be inquirers. We want them to reflect on what they're listening to. So when you are listening to me talking today, don't just listen. Think, reflect on what I'm saying, ask questions, because be inquisitive, so that you can kind of develop ideas of your own and always be ready to challenge what somebody is saying to you, right? So our world is changing, and more important than learning the formulae of mathematics, it is to be able to know how to use those formulae. Because you can find the formula on Google, but how you apply that formula to solve the problem is something that you need to learn. And that's why you need to be an inquirer. You need to be knowledgeable. You need to be aware of what is out there in terms of the knowledge that you can search for, because if you don't know what you're searching for, you won't be able to find it, right? So you need to understand maths, but you don't need to memorize it, which is what we often do in our education systems. But I don't want to talk about education systems. I want to tell you a little bit about artificial intelligence. And, by looking at all of those headlines that have been appearing in the last 5 to 6 years in media, you might think that artificial intelligence is a new thing. But people with even more amazing beards than me, as you can see there, have been working on artificial intelligence since 1956. So we have actually had people in the world that have been thinking about making computers intelligent for almost 70 years. And it is only now that we are seeing the impact of the great work that these people had been doing. And the reason why they were interested in artificial intelligence was that computers had proven to be very valuable in code breaking during the war, by operations being automated, number crunching being done by these computers. But yet computers seem to kind of suffer when it came to challenges that humans found to be very, very simple, right? And so what they wanted to do was to try and figure out, how do humans think? So it's all about understanding this child that is born with no knowledge of the world. How does this child learn? This child learns because this child has amazing sensors that have been given to it naturally. We have eyes that can capture images. We have ears that can listen to sounds. We have a tongue that can create sounds, and therefore we can communicate with each other. The tongue can also taste things. We have the skin that can perceive many feelings also, right? So we have a lot of sensors on our body. And so how do we use it, right? Let's take this example of this child that is sitting in their garden, doesn't have a lot of communication skills. And so what is this child going to do, right? He's looking around. He hears a sound, or she hears a sound, of something above the head, and she looks up and sees something flying over her head. Now, being inquisitive or being an inquirer, she points at this and says, goo goo gaga, because he doesn't know the words, right? So what do children do? Goo goo gaga, they make sounds. And so the parent next to them will look up and smile at them and say, that is a bird. And so the child has now perceived something through their ear and has learned the word, the label bird, for this image that it has seen. And so it has learned the concept. It has memorized that and stored it inside the brain, which is our hard disk in some ways, right? Or the storage mechanism that we have. Now, a few days later, the child goes out again and has developed some abilities to make sounds, remembers that things that fly over their head are birds, hears the sound again, looks up and smiles and says, bird. At which point the parent next to them has a nervous breakdown. Why? Because that's an aeroplane, it's not a bird. So what does the parent do? Maros a chaped to the child, right? And says, you silly child, you're never going to make it to IIT, right? Typical Indian parent. worried now, having a nervous breakdown that this child is not going to be intelligent, and says, that's an aeroplane. Now, fortunately, now the child takes that information. It has an image of a bird and the label bird. It has an image of an aeroplane and the label aeroplane. And what does it learn to do? It learns to discriminate. We often tell our children, don't discriminate. The truth is that naturally, it is the standard process that we are following to be able to identify one thing as opposed to another thing, right? We are discriminating between these objects and being able to then identify them. So this discrimination that takes place follows a process. We need to extract features. So the child might look at the two images and say, you know, I remember that the aeroplane was not flapping its wings, but the bird was. So it picks up that one feature and says, that's enough. It's very interesting how the brain works, right? It works by learning minimal information and saying, I can discriminate between the things I need to discriminate in between, and so I will stop there, rather than learning lots of different features. Now, why is that a problem? The problem is, I'll give you an example. When I was living in Ireland for a number of years, I had lived there for maybe 7 or 8 years, working in the university, and my colleagues knew me and they knew my name, and we would always say hello to each other when we would pass each other in the corridor. What was interesting is that when my brother came to visit me, very often my colleagues would refer to them with my name and say, hi, Sarab. And I was obviously very upset, right? I mean, I always considered myself to be better looking than my brother. And here my brother was being, identified as me. But then when you think about the cognitive side of this, what had happened was that the humans were assuming that a turban is equal to Sarab, because in Ireland, there was no other turban. I was the only person walking around with a turban. So suddenly, when they saw another turban, they assumed it was me. But it's only after I corrected them, they started to say, oh, I now need to find other features also that are going to discriminate between these two people that have turbans. And then they might have seen differences in height, maybe differences in color, or whatever it is, right? And therefore start to discriminate further. And so what people started to do in artificial intelligence research was to try and mimic this process. So if we think about a computer, electronic data is what is coming in from the sensors that is coming as input into the computer. The computer now has to extract features, an area called feature engineering. We then build a model to discriminate between different concepts. Okay, and that's the basic learning process, which is called induction. Now, what is interesting is the fact that in today's world, we have lots of different types of data. We have data that looks like a table, like we have here, and that's the kind of data that I was exposed to when I started doing machine learning in the early 1990s. So around 30 years ago, we only talked about two types of data. There was data that looked like a table, as we are seeing at the top here, and there was data that looked like a time series, right? So the price of IBM or Microsoft, we can actually see, or the temperature on each day, we are actually seeing a time series, and we would deal with this kind of data. But as we started to apply these algorithms in the real world, we found that a lot of the data looked very complicated. So you go into any company, for example, you go into Zomato and look at all the data that they're collecting about you, you'll find that it is structured in multiple tables like this. This is called a relational database. So in the 1990s, when I started working with machine learning, a large part of what we were doing was we were taking data that looked much more complicated, like this in the bottom left, and we converted it into a representation like this before we could do machine learning. But just as we started getting good at that, what happened? Google happened. The internet happened, right? And so what we had was lots of textual data, documents to analyze. Suddenly we had speech data becoming available in digital form, right? A very high frequency time series. We had images from satellites that were being collected. What are these? They are sensors. Just like our eyes and our ears, we are now with the satellites able to collect data, with cameras that are on the roads catching us whenever we do something naughty, driving, it catches us. That's also a sensor. It's observing the world, and all of that data of different types, images, video, speech, text, is coming towards us. And now with the Internet of Things, where we are now able to create electronic devices. For example, in farming, we have created IoT devices that can collect the CO2 levels, right? Coming from in a farm, right? Or the moisture of the soil, or the temperature of the soil, right? Or the acidity, the pH level of the soil, and even collect information on some of the nutrients of the soil. All of this data is now getting generated automatically. All we do is we go and put these sensors into the ground, and now we are getting this data coming in. So machine generated data is becoming a very, very important part of our lives. Now, the ultimate aim, of course, in artificial intelligence is to model the brain, because that's our best example of real intelligence, natural intelligence, where our intelligence as human beings comes from the brain within our skulls. And the brain essentially consists of billions and trillions of cells called neurons. And these neurons that are shown here have lots of inputs to them, and it has an output. So they're like little computers, right? When we have a computer, even a calculator is a very, very simple computer. We put some inputs and give it some commands, and it produces an output, right? And the real power of the brain comes from the connectivity of these neurons. And so early scientists started to study the brain to understand how it works. And that led to some pretty sad experiments with animals, unfortunately, right? So in the 1950s, some researchers wanted to understand how the vision component works. And so they basically took this cat and they gave it some medicine so that it kind of became a little, relaxed. And they put it inside this machine here where it couldn't move around. And they showed it very simple objects, right, to this cat here. And they were then with electrodes understanding how the neurons were firing, right? And trying to understand how the cat is perceiving these different edges. And they came up with this idea here that the cat's brain, and therefore also because the human brain is more evolved than that of the cat, has this hierarchical structure to it. So first of all, the perception of the very first neurons that are hit by the light that comes in through the eyes, the lens of the eyes, is really only perceiving a very small space. And it is just looking at, you can say, 1 pixel of data. Then it fires back and says, I got hit with a lot of light intensity along various bands of light, right? Like red, green, and blue. And now taking that information along with some of the neighborhood information, the next set of neurons takes those inputs and produces an output, which is some feature in a small part of that image. And as we go through multiple layers like this in this hierarchical structure, we are actually able to then understand what we are seeing, right? The brain is able to label it. So for the child also, we've gone through many, many neurons till a point where it can now say, what I'm looking at is a bird or an aeroplane. And so they created these things called convolutional neural networks. And these also have been around for 20 or 30 decades, right? 20 or 30 years, right? But we are now seeing the power of them because we have hardware that allows us to train these well. So just like the child that is seeing lots of images of birds is able to now distinguish between birds and aeroplanes of different types, the same way the idea is that these neural networks that are a model of the brain, if we give them a lot of images, we have two parts to these neural networks. The first part does feature engineering. It actually learns some interesting things, right? And we'll see some examples of those. And the second part here, which is labeled as fully connected, is learning to discriminate between the different classes, right? So it might be whether it's a healthy plant or a diseased plant, or if it is diseased, which disease is it? Or is this part of the plant, is this plant a weed, or is it actually a healthy plant, right? And so should not be kind of touched. Those are the kinds of examples. Now, I'm not going to get deep into these things because it takes 6 months for us to really understand this technology. But if we give two inputs like these two, right? So this is Gurmukh, who is one of our prodigy students from Sabudh that is now in Canada studying, and myself, two human faces, to most untrained human beings, we are probably the same, right? We both have turbans, beard, this, that, and the other. Of course, to a trained eye, we can make the difference out. But what is interesting is that the neural network, after the feature engineering, if we look at what comes out when we analyze my image, we can see that the same boxes here are getting highlighted for both of us, right? So whereas there are a number of boxes here, features that are not present, right? They are black completely. And the same ones are completely black for both of us. So there are some features that are lighting up, getting activated for human faces. Now, at the same time, if I instead look at a human face and a house, now the assumption here is that my face does not look like that of a house. And I'm glad to say it doesn't, right? The neural network is identifying these features again still for me as my face. And this feature, for example, is getting highlighted, whereas it was not activated here at all, right? For the house. And we can learn to discriminate based on this now, right? So that process you can see is being followed, but it's actually very difficult for a human to look at these features and say, what the neural network has done is to identify a nose, eyes, and a mouth. And therefore, it's saying this is a face, as opposed to the house where it's identified windows and doors and pillars, right? So we can't really understand these models. Now, what is very, very interesting, though, is the fact that we have learned from an artificial intelligence perspective to transfer what we have learned in one domain into another. So when we learn features in one domain, for example, here we have data, which is an open data set called ImageNet. We can take the learned neural network and utilize that when we want to differentiate between, in a healthcare scenario, whether somebody has a benign or a malignant tumor in it, right? And what we are saying is, if you think about it, right, a human being that is looking at an object, if we think of all the layers it goes through, first we might identify edges of the object. The object, the edges come together in the next layer and they become rectangles and squares and whatever, right? And then those get put together and suddenly we are able to see that this is a table. Now, once we have learned to identify a table, if I go out and I look to identify a football, right? I don't have to learn edge detection again, right? To identify these edges and these rectangles or squares and all of these geometrical shapes. But I am able to take my understanding of edges and geometric shapes and almost perceive them immediately, right? And we are doing the same thing here in transfer learning. So this is a very, very popular mechanism that is used these days, where we take features that have been learned, maybe to discriminate between different types of dresses and fashion. And we take that neural network's features and apply it to disease detection in agriculture, right? But we still have to fine tune the model. So we will still give it some images of diseases, different types of plant diseases, but we will ultimately benefit from the learning that happened in fashion industry and be able to apply it here. And this is pretty cool stuff. Okay, and it's really helped a great deal in some of the successes that have taken place. Why is it that we are so accurate? What is the reason why an image is being classified as a husky or a wolf? Okay, and when they did this, basically the way that they used to look at explaining why this image here, which is on the left side, was classified as a wolf, they found that actually only a small part of the animal was being used. In some cases, even smaller parts of the animal were being used. Actually, the background was being used in the prediction. So while I would be quite happy to see a classification of this image as a husky based on the face of the animal, I would not be very happy if I was getting the prediction of a wolf, given that it saw snow in the background, right? And imagine transferring that to agriculture, where we are identifying that there is this particular disease, or that this is a picture of weed, but we are actually not even taking the weed plant into account. We are taking the surrounding region and making that prediction. It could result in us using the wrong sprays, pulling out the wrong plant, if we blindly followed the artificial intelligence, right? Or if we identified an insect, right, as being a harmful insect, but it was being identified by looking at the leaf that the insect was sitting on, that would be a problem, right? And so people started to work in this area of explainable AI. And using that, they were able to try and give explanations. Here is another example. When we are using self-driving cars, right? The idea here is, again, the self-driving car has lots of sensors. And say it's using a camera to identify a stop sign. What researchers showed was that these models are very, very sensitive. So even if you change a small number of pixels in this image, a human being will still look at this image on the right and say that's a stop sign. But with these black and white patches that have been put in here, the machine learning or the neural network algorithm actually identified that as a speed limit of 45. So rather than stopping, the car would start to accelerate maybe here, right? And would cause an accident. And so it's quite easy to fool these models. And when we are thinking about putting them into the real world, where they could be killing people, it's a problem, right? So we need to understand better why these models are making decisions that they're making. Now, that's all good, right? I mean, fair enough. We understand the limitations. We understand why and how these neural networks are learning. But here is a bigger problem for us in India. There is a term called the weird user. And by weird user, I don't mean the common usage of the word weird. Weird is an acronym for Western, industrialized, educated, rich, democratic users. These are citizens of countries in the West of the world. A lot of the artificial intelligence that has been developed in the Western part of this world, even if it's by researchers of Indian origin, but it has still been developed in those parts, using data that is really only relevant to Western people, right? Now, I'll give you an example of why this is a problem. And this is a very, very simple example, right? When I had my first child, I was living in the United Kingdom. And they gave us these things called growth charts. There was a different growth chart for girls. There was a different growth chart for boys. They were not being gender biased here, right? They were just saying that boys and girls are different. So they need to grow in different ways in the first few weeks of their life. So on the x-axis, we have weeks. And out here in this example, we have the weight of the child. Now, what we are seeing here is they're saying that the child at age 28 must be a little less than 6 kilos. And definitely not much more than, or should be a little less than 11 kilos. So that's the kind of valid interval within which their weight should be. What happened though was that my daughter was sitting outside at the bottom of this. And typically what that means is that you're not feeding your child well, or there is some medical problem with your child. And we were all very worried until we met a doctor that said, don't worry about it. The reason for it is that these charts, this is also a model created by humans, were created for children that were white Caucasians, right? And those children are bigger. It's just that their genetic makeup is different from ours, and therefore they are bigger. Now imagine if this is the data that was being used by artificial intelligence to build a model to say, is the parent abusing the child or not? Every Asian parent would probably be in jail in the UK, right? Because our children would be sitting outside the valid limits. This is true also of any diagnostics that we might do. So if we are working on a model for predicting whether somebody is depressed, it's going to be different for somebody living in a village compared to somebody living in the city. It's definitely going to be different from somebody who's living in a Western country. And so when we pick up pre-trained models that have been published by Google or by whoever else, we have to be careful. We have to understand the ethics behind doing that. We have to understand the biases in the data. And that's why what I say is we must solve our own problems. India is very bad at collecting data. We are terrible at collecting data. If you look at Wikipedia, we have such a small number of articles in Hindi or Punjabi or Bengali and so on. Smaller countries that have 1-2 million people have much more articles that has been written. And they have created parallel corpuses, right? Articles written in their language, which are translations of articles in English. And that's the kind of data that is required when we want to build an AI-based system that can translate from English to Punjabi. I'll give you other examples along the way as well. So we must start as a nation collecting data, right? That's going to be a huge gift we can give to future generations. Now, the cool thing about the machine learning and people who work in machine learning like myself is that we can work in some very interesting areas. For example, we have developed models for forecasting the power generation from wind farms. We have used non-invasive electrodes. So, right, this is a skull cap that has 20 electrodes that are reading the impulse, the firing of neurons in the brain of a person to identify whether they are suffering from some neurological disease like dementia or ADHD, right? We are also using it now to understand the impact of classical rags on the brain of the human being, right? You could use it if you wanted to try and make fast money by trading in cryptocurrencies. You could create chatbots. We are all using chatbots today, but those chatbots are not very much available in Indian languages. They're in English, right? So if we want these to be in Indian languages and to be good, because if we want to actually communicate with farmers, for example, we need these to be in Punjabi or in Kannada or in Telugu or whatever language that farmer actually speaks in. And of course, it's also, we could work in education and make a change in education using these adaptive learning systems. But what is more important than that? And here is another example where we had built a technology for recommending recipes to people based on what food they have inside their fridge. So automatically the artificial intelligence is identifying that you have tomatoes, you have corn, you have gobi, broccoli, and various other things, right? And based on that, we can recommend. But of course, the same technology is being used to identify in a large photograph. You have insects, identifying what that insect is. How many insects can you see in that small area, right? Understanding how serious the attack is that you are seeing in the field. And so while you can work on these kinds of problems that impact business or impact individual people living in urban cities, What I want to focus on for the next 10 minutes or so is sustainable development goals, right? The United Nations has identified certain goals for us around quality of education, around healthcare provision, around zero hunger, right? Around no poverty. All of this, if we want to solve these large, serious problems that are actually threatening to destroy us as a race, we need to be able to perceive the environment. And that's why IoT is so important. These are devices that can collect data for us. And then on top of that, we have to put artificial intelligence that takes that data. Humans can't consume so much data, so we need to use these artificial intelligence algorithms that can actually model the world and can tell humans what actions to take potentially to save our planet. Let's take an example, and this is an example that is dear to all of us, which is agriculture. We all know that Punjab has been the land where we have had the Green Revolution. Punjab at one stage fed the whole nation. But over the last few years, we have seen neglect in this state. We have seen the fact that we are seeing farmer suicides, not just in Punjab, but across the country, because we have farmers that have been left to deal with some very difficult problems. We in the cities are the ones that are creating these problems. We are the ones that are creating most emissions that are impacting the atmosphere. The fact that we are impacting the climate is a problem, right? And as a result, we can see that over the last 10 years, or maybe more, 15 years, Punjab has gone from being one of the richest states to one of the less so rich states in the country. And we have left our children looking for Chardi Kala on the streets. So how can we help these children? How can we create technologies to make sure that we can reverse the impact that the Green Revolution has had, that the low water tables that we have got in the state now have, right? Or the toxicity in the soil that we have? How can we give technologies, help farmers? Corporate farming is not the only answer, right? And so if you haven't seen this movie, I would really urge you to see it, called The Martian. It's a story, a fictional story about this man who gets left on, an astronaut that gets left on Mars. And using his training, he successfully survives by growing potatoes on Mars. And at that point in this movie, there is a quote by him where he says, at some point, everything's going to go south on you. Means it's going to all go bad. You can either accept that or you can get to work. And I think it is time for us all to contribute and get to work rather than leaving it only to the farmers to feed us. The problem, of course, we all know. The population of the world is increasing. 30%, or some estimates say 15 to 30%. Some farmers I've spoken to have said that almost 100% of their crop has been destroyed by pests. And we have left it to the farmers to deal with all of this. Climate change is not only caused by the farmers. One thing that we have to recognize is that just like humans, plants also get infected by fungi, viruses, bacteria, and pests. And just as we keep an electronic medical record, or at least a medical record for humans, the idea behind this project that we are doing is to say, why not create an electronic medical record for a farm? And the idea here is that, well, let's face it, we have the capacity to generate a lot more data than we had earlier. And we look at some of the technologies that generate that data. We have a lot more computing power. We have amazing algorithms that we have seen kind of mimic human behavior and understanding and intelligence. And we've got better sensors and mobile connectivity that works most of the time. So the point is, using all of this technology, how can we create a platform that can help the poorest of farmers. Now, when I was presenting this in a conference in Hyderabad, somebody got up and said, how can the farmers afford this, right? It's out of the question. My point is, we can afford to create this and make this infrastructure available to the farmers for free, if need be, right? Or we can actually create collectives of farmers that can invest in this technology and can create better yield for all of them. But what we want to do is, we talk about personalized medicine. Why don't we talk about personalized solutions for farmers? And of course, the world is not sitting around waiting, right? While we are talking about, can a farmer afford technology? The world is going ahead and developing robots that can help farmers by doing imaging, right? And identifying where we need to put herbicide or pesticide. They're reducing the amount of pesticide that needs to be used. They're using imaging to identify weeds and pulling out the weeds with these machines and protecting the nutrients that are otherwise being taken over by weeds from the soil, leaving them for the plant. We have drones that are flying and doing imaging and identifying where disease is starting so that we can take preventative action. Just as in cancer, if we diagnose cancer early, we can actually do something about it. Now, the thing that people say is, well, that's why we need corporate farming. We don't. There are enough of us out there that can create this technology stack. And we have in Sabudh worked towards creating a technology stack that brings satellite data. With one drone, you can actually cover a whole village, for example. Why do we need to get farmers to invest in technology that is expensive? Why can't we just do it in any case? The data that we are generating is the farmer's data. We should be creating an asset for the farmer, right? That the farmer can then utilize. Today, the people talk about data being the new oil. Well, let the farmers whose farm it is that we are doing imaging from also get returns for allowing us to do the imaging on their farms, increasing their yield. A number of companies are doing different pieces. You'll see satellite imagery here, soil data collection, hyper-local weather data. We'll see examples of even some POCs that have been done by ICRISAT and Microsoft in Hyderabad, where they actually delayed the time of seeding. So what are we talking about? We're talking about precision farming. And there, in a very simple case, we can say that, well, we have a drone that flies over large areas. We stitch all of those images that it takes with its camera into one large image. We do some analysis on this and segment it, identify areas of stress. These red patches here are areas of stress. We guide farmers to those areas with a handheld device. Everybody has a mobile phone that is a smartphone these days. The farmer can take photographs out here, upload them, and then using the artificial intelligence, we can identify what is the disease, and we could actually even get drones to spray in those areas. One of the big problems we have is overuse of pesticide right now, right? So we could actually do much, we can reduce the amount of pesticide, which is going to result in profit for the farmer. We can put that together with IoT devices. And I'll show you some of those also, and my folks will show you what we have developed there. In-field sensors for soil testing and for soil health in general, right? Today, some farmers, a very small percentage, send soil for a health check. But actually, how the nutrients are depleting can tell us something about disease onset as well, if we want to identify early on a disease that is coming in. Hyper-local data can be collected by these IoT devices also. And if we do this on a daily basis, we are getting a time series of data that tells us about how the farm behaved. We can look at the yield from the farm, and we can then try and build models to say, can we predict the yield? Can we predict problems that cause the yield to reduce, right? And this data is what I'm saying is worth its price, its weight in gold. And the farmers should own this. And if we can create such a state where we are monitoring the quality of farming that the farmer is doing, why can't farmers together become a small enterprise of their own, a medium-sized enterprise that actually, through this data, gets people to invest in the future of their produce? And that's the state that we want to get to. So we have created a platform in Sabudh that collects satellite data, global weather data. We've developed IoTs that are collecting information. We are actually, we've created a social media kind of platform where farmers can upload observations, they can connect with experts and chat with experts to get feedback, right? And this is all a mobile device that is currently being tested out near Mohali, and we are taking it to other parts of the country as well. At the same time, we are also recognizing that the world we live in is a complex system. Every little thing that happens somewhere is impacting other things. The fact that we have done deforestation of Punjab, the forest cover is almost close to zero out there, right? Now there is a NGO called 𝐿 that is doing reforestation in Punjab and also in other parts of the world, right across the world, not only India, right? And so what we are doing is we have put these IoT devices out in those forests where we are collecting sound. These are ambient sound recorders. With the sounds that are being recorded here, we are identifying which birds are coming to those areas and how bringing back trees, and as the forests mature, how the bird population is changing, so that we can understand the impact that the bird population change is having on farming that happens near those forested areas too, right? The same data that we are collecting, the weather data, we are also using for the Kalgidhar Trust that has, I think, 150 rural schools. By looking at, they've actually put solar panels there. So using the same weather data that we are collecting for farming and predicting the outcomes of farming can be used and is being used by us to predict the output from solar panels, so that we can figure out the optimal way in which we can reduce the cost of electricity provision within those schools, right? And optimize the setup there. Basically, these emerging technologies and our artificial intelligence is allowing us to solve problems that most computer science graduates cannot solve, right? And so there's a famous line from, I think, Star Trek, to boldly go where no one has gone before. So what I'm doing here is to invite you to continue with this workshop, learn about how these technologies are impacting agriculture, go in directions that people have not thought about. Two of the areas that I have not discussed here and is actually in our platform, we actually have mandi prices coming in there, right? We have a marketplace type environment. And so one of the ways in which we can extend this is to say farmers can advertise their produce, right? We can look at measuring the quality of that produce and giving it star ratings so that people who are buying it can actually buy with confidence that the produce is of good quality. And we can create a marketplace where people are buying and selling produce out there itself. We can also work on logistics for how we collect the produce that has been purchased and optimally deliver it to reduce the carbon emissions and reduce the effect on our world that we are living in. Okay, so with that, I'll stop. Bang on time. I'm not sure if there are any time for questions or if there are any questions, but I have my email address here for you, sarabjot@sabudh.org. Would love to hear from you if you have any questions, and would love to answer them all. So there you go. Over to you, Diksha. You're on mute, Diksha.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was a very educative session. If you won't mind, we'll ask a few questions to you right now.
Sure, sure.
Yes, sir. So the first question that was asked was, how do you see the future of IoT and AI in India?
I think the future is very bright, right? Like I said, IoT devices are like the ears and eyes of humans, right? But for the farm. Just as when we fall sick, we go to the doctor and say, diagnose what I have. The doctor is collecting data. With IoT devices, we have the ability to collect data on an ongoing way. And that data getting pushed into the cloud, right, infrastructure. And that data then, of course, has to be analyzed with artificial intelligence. The important thing that I believe we should be very careful about doing is to give automatic advice based on that. Because I don't think the artificial intelligence is there where it can start giving automatic advice. So if we can take the data, analyze the data, provide output that an expert can use, but an expert gives the advice to the farmer, I think that would be a much better place to be, because we owe it to the farmers. These are our farmers in India have small holdings. They're not corporate farmers, and we want them to succeed in farming. And so we need to be very careful about that advice giving that we are doing.
Yes, sir. So the second question would be, how Sabudh Foundation is helping Indian farmers at grassroots level?
So, what we have done is to develop this technology stack. We have been working with some farmers from the outskirts of Mohali. In fact, later this week, I'm even flying to Tamil Nadu to work with some farmers out there to see, for us to put out the IoT devices there, to start monitoring using the satellites, those farms, and identify areas of stress. Areas of stress is not a problem in itself, right? But to diagnose why that stress is important, because we can remove the issues that are causing the stress there and therefore increase the yield. Now that we have the stack in place, we are in the process of now looking at how we can roll that out. From Sabudh Foundation's perspective, the ideal scenario is that if we can get farmers to work together and to make optimal decisions for themselves, that is our win for us. That's what we're looking to do.
Okay, sir. What are some challenges of AI in Indian agriculture?
Well, the challenges are that there is no data. So we have to start from data collection. And that's why our focus has very much been on creating these IoT devices, looking at how we can collect satellite data. How can we use that satellite data to make diagnoses along with the IoT data, right? The weather data, the global weather data. Again, our IoT devices are collecting data about what is called hyper-local weather data, so that we can correlate it with what is being reported by global weather stations and look at how much of an error there is in the predictions of those global weather stations, so that we can actually build that into the models that we build.
Okay, sir. So one last question. As farmers are not adopting this crop diversification, water table of Punjab is also getting deeper. So this year, yield of wheat has also reduced by 30%. How can we transform Punjab agriculture and farming system so that our economy and farmers would not commit suicide? Like, Punjab is an alarming situation. So, sir, I hope that a personality like yours and your organization will help to transfer the farming system.
See, I think that's a very, very good point you've made. And I think we are all aware of what the problem is. Now, really, the only way that this can be solved is, first of all, we need to de-risk the farmers going from what they understand as a process. They understand how to grow wheat. They understand how to grow rice. They have experience and greater knowledge about these things than any of us have, right? But the reason why they cannot move from that, even when yield is going down, is that their fear is that whatever they move to might give them even less profit. So we have farmers that are poor. They can't take that risk. We must help them take the risk, right? And part of the whole idea of collecting data and creating transparency into the growing process is that ideally, the ideal situation I want for a farmer is that a farmer never has to take a loan. Why can't we use this data to show people living in the US and Europe that are from Punjab, for example, looking at the practices of farming and deciding to invest in the future of the farmer, right? The problem with debt is the fact that the farmer takes the debt. If he has a bad time and has very low yield, that debt stays with him And that's why he commits suicide, right? He can't see any way out of it. But if we invest in his future, we are sharing his debt. We are actually sharing his risk. We are saying, okay, I'm giving you this money, but once you produce output, out of the profits you get, you can give me 10% of your profits or 20% of your profit, right? And so then we become part of that whole equation. And once we are coming into this and saying we will invest, why won't a farmer take risk? Because his risk has reduced, right? Now maybe he's got money flowing in from my investment, just as any startup, right? What I'm suggesting is that every farmer could be a startup of its own, where it gets investors, we de-risk the problem and get them to try out novel crop rotation and diversity. And once we have a few farmers that are successful in doing so, others will follow. That's always been the case.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So this was it for the questionnaire round. On behalf of Just Agriculture, thank you so much for such an interactive and educative session, sir. Yes,
Thank
now
you,
I
Diksha.
would like to, okay, sir. Now I'd like to, like Ishani to start with the second, another session.
Am I audible?
Yes, Ishani.
Hello. Okay. Knowledge is like a garden. If it is not cultivated, it cannot be harvested. A very good evening to everyone present here. It gives me immense pleasure to extend to you a very warm welcome on behalf of Just Agriculture e-magazine, who has clubbed all of us for the International Training cum Webinar Program. I, Ishani, warmly welcome our guest of honor and the speaker of today's session, 𝘦𝘬𝘺𝘺𝘺𝘺𝘺𝘺𝘺𝑔𝑒𝑚𝑒𝑛𝑡, Junior Officer Research and Development, AES Agro Limited, Dr. DPS Badwal, Organizing Director of this training cum workshop program, committee members, and most importantly, all the participants of the 21-day virtual international training cum workshop program. Just Agriculture e-magazine is an open access, peer-reviewed e-magazine and e-newsletter. The magazine provides a platform to all the researchers, students, scholars, and scientists to share their ideas about latest innovative topics in agriculture. This training will benefit the participants to be acquainted with the advanced technologies in the field of agriculture. And this would be the best platform for all the participants pan-India to understand advanced technologies to create more employment avenues and strengthen the economy of our country. So participants, you should feel lucky enough to be a part of this session. Our guest of honor, Anagha M. Gedwag, is a junior officer at AES Agro, working and managing greenhouse activities right from seed sowing to harvesting. Ma'am has worked at Physis Agtech Private Limited as a botanist and farm manager, worked as a farm executive at Growtopia Farmers LLP, project manager at the Center for Research in Alternative Farming Technologies, CRAFT. Ma'am has an expertise in hydroponic cultivation, open field and protected cultivation, farm management, new product development, research and development. Ma'am has won achievements in research papers on comparative study for protein content in selected pulses and worked on research papers related to microflora in hydroponic system. Now, I will invite Anagha 𝘦𝘺𝘺𝘺𝘺𝘺 ma'am to deliver the lecture on hydroponics. Over to you, ma'am.
Ishani, she is not audible.
Yes, her mic is on, but ma'am, could you try switching on your mic?
Hello, am I audible?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am, you're audible now. Ma'am,
Ma'am, your voice is breaking and your video is not visible yet.
ma'am, could you please rejoin the session, ma'am? Ma'am, if you could try rejoining the session, I think you might would work.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible now.
Right. Hello.
Ma'am, yes, ma'am, you're audible in between. Ma'am, could you please rejoin the session? I think your mic would work then.
Thank you so much.
You may start.
Yeah. Sorry for the glitches. There's some technical glitch at my place, and hence for the bandwidth issue, I'm not starting my video yet. Okay, so going ahead with the session, as you all are attending my session for hydroponics. Previously, Mr. Peter has already given you a great, presentation about hydroponics. So taking ahead my session, please, next slide. Yeah, so already Ishani has given a great introduction about me. Myself, Ananga Gaikwad, I'm working as a junior officer in research and development in Aries Agro Limited. My work there is totally dependent on managing the greenhouse, trying new products in the systems, and keep on doing R&D and with the new products, keep on doing some or the other research on the products and the plants. So talking about hydroponics, I have more than 5 years of experience. Talking about hydroponics is like basically I wasn't convinced about hydroponics, frankly speaking. But once I got convinced through the procedures and how the system actually works, how the systems are going to give you a better yield, and how it is going to grow in the whole world, had made me convinced to get my expertise in hydroponics. Next slide, please. So the current agri sector scenario in our world is the growing buildings all over the world. No land is available right now to do agriculture. So whatever left with us is just the barren land, no fertile land. The demand for the food is growing drastically. I don't know how we are going to survive in the next coming years for the food. As already some of the people, like I can say 10% of the people has moved on and started growing their own food without any pesticide. Whatever we are eating right now is completely pesticide rich food right now. The changing climate, as you can see, in Mumbai it was raining some days before. I don't know, like it's April, no, May hasn't started yet, but it has started raining. So this kind of problems are worsening our climate, and agriculture in such climate is really very difficult. Next. So wondering where this hydroponics came in. So this is nothing new. Let me tell you, this is nothing new. Hydroponics is a very, very, very old technique of farming, which was being, used by ages to do farming. Hydroponics was being already used as a technique for growing plants and crops and everything. But apparently for some centuries it got distinct, and now that we don't have more land available, we don't have more sources available to grow food for us, now we only can use this hydroponic techniques, wherein we are not going to use any type of soil, we are not going to use any, we are not going to rely on the fertile land again. Next. So is it new? No, it is not at all new. If you can see the picture, the people in the ages were growing the food on the water. If you can see the floating rafts, which is right now used. If you can, ahead I am going to explain you about the different systems which are used in hydroponics. Among them is one of the raft system, which is right now you are seeing, where people are doing agriculture on the same thing. The second picture explains of hanging gardens of Babylon. Babylon hanging gardens were built in before 600th century BC. That is before Christ 600th century. And the whole plants in this garden were all soilless. So basically this is where the hydroponics, and this has got the highest record so far of hydroponic farming, the Babylon, and it is one of the wonders of, the world. Second, right. What's the history behind hydroponics? So as I said you, floating farms in Mexico, which were already built in 10th and 11th century, were part of, the hydroponic growing technique. The famous garden called the Hanging Garden of Babylon, which was 600 BC, is the earliest record. And you know what, in this method, I'll explain this method ahead. It is very similar to the raft method, which I'm going to take you ahead. Next. So please go across this. I want you guys to listen to this video. Yeah. So I hope you guys went through this video. So before starting to details about hydroponics, let's remember some points here. Hydroponic is an alternate cultivation technique. It's not something coding related thing, or nothing very fancy or something. It's just alternative cultivation technique. The plant requirement, whatever the plant requires to grow, the essential nutrients and everything do not change. All are going to be the same for the plants to grow it into a healthy plant. Hydroponics is not organic. No, you cannot call a hydroponic produce as an organic produce. You cannot certify your produce as organic. Yes, you can certify your produce or you can label your produce as a residue-free produce, but you cannot claim it as organic. There are no special seeds for hydroponics. So talking about hydroponics, some people might have thought ki, okay, there must be some different seeds for hydroponics. There must be different kinds of plants for hydroponics. No, all the regular seeds which are used in soil agriculture are the ones which are used for hydroponics also. Next. Next slide. Yeah. So what is exactly hydroponics? Hydroponics came out from a Latin word. Hydro is water, ponics is culture. Okay, so this is what hydroponics is all about. Hydroponics is working water or growing plants without water. So in the water, whatever we are going to, like whatever we give in the soil is what we are going to give in the water to the plants to survive and grow it into a healthy plant. So basically the dissolved salts, we dissolve the salts of nutrients into the water, and that amount of nutrients are being given to the plant for the healthy growth. In hydroponics, how do you tell a plant is healthy? So basically in hydroponics, wherever the root system is, where the roots are white in color, we can claim that the plant is healthy enough and it is getting its nutrition very nice. Yes, hydroponically grown plants are much more healthier. I'll tell you a very small example where even I got convinced somewhere for hydroponics. So for example, if I tell you I am a person wherein I am getting a chocolate without a wrapper, and in the next hand I am getting a chocolate with the wrapper. Obviously, I'll be able to take the chocolate without the wrapper easily and eat it faster than the wrapper one. Okay. So this is how the plants behave. If I'm spoon feeding the nutrients to the plants, yes, they are going to grow very nicely because it's ready made. Okay. And in the same way, when it is in the soil, the plants at the roots have to source the nutrients, and then they will provide it to the plant, and then the plant will utilize it, and then it will grow into a healthy plant. So this is all about hydroponics. This is how I got convinced, because if I'm going to spoon feed my plant, yes, obviously I'm going to make my plant much healthier than whatever is going to grow in the soil. Next. So so far I have been talking good points about hydroponics, but yes, it also has some demerits about hydroponics. I'll talk about the merits first. The nutrient uptake is improved. As I already explained, the nutrient uptake improves because I'm going to spoon feed the nutrients. That is why the nutrients uptake is going to improve. There is no soil, so no soil-borne diseases are being occurred any plant. Controlled and automated system, we can control the growth of the plant. Whatever requirement of the nutrients is there, we will control that. We will control the root zone temperature. We will control the surrounding temperature. We are going to just take care of the plant like a baby in a hydroponic system. Maximize growing space. Hydroponics, sky's the limit. The systems are very different types. So now you must have been hearing about vertical systems and vertical gardens and hanging pots and everything. So vertically, sky is the limit for the systems to grow. So maximize growing space you are going to get. So there is no worry of the land, less nutrient loss. Here, the nutrients which I'm going to provide are going to, recirculated in the system. So there is very less amount of nutrients which are, going to be used. stable and high yield. As I'm going to control the plant strictly, the yields I'm going to promise is the stable, continuous, and a very clean growth I can promise in the hydroponic system. Fast growth, use of automation. Automation is the next big thing coming up in agriculture. Uses of automation in hydroponics is where you can use the timers, the fogger systems, the photo dosing systems. There are n number of things which have come up in automation which you can use in hydroponics. There are some demerits also. As I'm going to control it, as I'm going to do everything to make my plant very healthy, it is going to require electricity, and the required electricity is 24/7. So this is a very big demerit of hydroponic farming. High startup cost, yes, the systems cost really very high. There is like you have to study thoroughly about the systems, about from where you can manufacture it or something, but the startup cost is really very high. Not everyone can do hydroponics. Yes, you need to have some or the other training or some or the other education related to hydroponics. If you get properly trained, if you get properly, well versed with you get some hands-on training or hands-on practice, you can definitely do hydroponics. It's not that fancy, it's not that very hard. Yes, you can do, but you need some part of training for growing hydroponically. Multi-cropping is very difficult here, as the leafy vegetable cycles is very shorter than the fruity vegetables. So what happens in fruity vegetables? The fruiting vegetables undergo three different stages. That's the vegetative stage, flowering stage, and then the fruiting stage. Whereas in the vegetative stage is only 45 to 50 days, and this fruiting plants are like it goes around 3 months, 6 months, or whatever plant we select on. So multi-cropping, and what happens when we are selecting a fruiting plant, along with that I'm going to grow the leafy vegetables. So as there are fruits, there are flowers. Flowers, it get attracted to the pest. I am not claiming that it is a pest free. Yes, you get pest in the greenhouse. You get pest in hydroponic farming also. So there is a pest attack, and then it's very difficult, and the systems also vary according to the crop. So leafy vegetables, we use some different systems for leafy vegetable growing. We use different systems for fruity vegetables growing. Next. So why I say hydroponics is nothing very difficult is if you can see, the plant actually requires a medium to grow, a support to grow, and some nutrients and sunlight. So what fertilizers are also been able to be, like, I can give fertilizer through soil also, my plant is going to grow with the sunlight. I can give the fertilizer with water also, still my plant is going to grow well. So I can say soil is just a medium to provide nutrients. Whereas the same thing, we are just using water instead of soil, and water is really good medium, but yes, we have some demerits which I'll explain you further. Next. So basically, talking about hydroponic systems now, they are categorized into two types. One is active system and second one is the passive system. So active system, you get closed loop systems wherein you have water based system which are you keep on circulating them, and in passive system there are substrate based system where you cannot collect much of water, you cannot use the circulate the water, and there is it's almost like soil, like when you use drip irrigation into the bed, it's similar to that type of system, but just the substrate used is coco peat or something else, which I'll explain you further. Next. types of systems. So water-based and aggregate-based. In water-based, we have n number of systems again. In aggregate-based, we have another grow bag system wherein we use coco peat, we use manure along with coco peat. We also use coco peat and perlite combination. We use coco peat and vermiculite combination. We use coco peat and vermicompost combination to strengthen the coco peat level. And yes, they are grown in the grow bags, and the irrigation is done by drip irrigation. Whereas in the water-based systems, there are systems like deep water culture. Deep water culture is where the pot is totally immersed in the water, and the roots grow totally immersed in the water. I have a diagram ahead in the next slide, which will explain you the types of system. Next. Yeah. So if you can see in this photo, the raft culture and deep water culture are not very different. Deep water culture also, you have a bucket filled with nutrition water. Air stone is required because we have to maintain the dissolved oxygen level. Wherein, because if you keep a stagnant water, there won't be the nutrient availability given to the plants. So we have to maintain the oxygen levels in the water. That is why we put a air stone or a bubbler into the systems where the water keeps on flowing and aeration is provided in the water. So deep water culture also, the pots are immersed in the nutrition water and the plants keep on growing. In the raft system, it's just that there is a styrofoam sheet wherein the net cups are inserted in the sheet and it keeps on floating, like we saw in the previous picture, how the people in the 10th and 11th century used to do the floating culture. It's similar to that. Majorly, this type of culture is used in aquaponics, floating raft system. Next. Yeah. So next is ebb and flow or flood and drain. So what happens here? There is a system where we fill the tank, we fill the grow bed with the substrate. It can be a clay soil, it can be coco peat. Coco peat is not much used, but it can be gravels, it can be clay balls. So the plants are adjusted with the net cups in the growing bed. The water is pumped up. Here there is very less use of electricity for a change, and the water is pumped up. Only the pump will require the electricity. Rest nothing, no aeration is required here, because I'll explain you. When the water pumps up into the bed, there is a system wherein when the water reaches to the pipe level, it automatically drains down, and when it drains down, it creates bubbles into the tank. So here the aeration is not at all required. So this is one of the flood and drain system. This also is not commercially used as far. NFT system is one of the best systems which is commercially used in hydroponics farming. So here there is a pipe. Now, before when we were studying hydroponics, we always had seen the round pipes, but now that it has been so advanced, the pipes have become rectangular in shape because the roots should touch the water level. So NFT is what? It's nutrient film technique. So there is a film of nutrients. If you can see in the picture, there is a film of nutrients flowing into the pipe, and the roots will uptake the nutrients while the water is flowing, and the same water is taken back to the reservoir and then again pumped up. So this is one of the best, I can say, NFT systems is one of the best systems used for majorly leafy vegetables to grow. Next. Yeah, aeroponics is also one type of system. In aeroponics, what is done is the nutrient water is misted on the root. So here there is a very less use of water and nutrients both. So there are timers wherein the water will keep on misting and the mister stops, and then it mists and then it stops. So this is how the nutrients are provided to the water. Aeroponics is majorly used to grow potatoes also. It's that great technology used in hydroponics. Next is Judge bucket system. So this type of system, this is an individual bucket system. So if you can see, each bucket has one plant each. So majorly this type of systems are used for fruiting vegetables like tomatoes, bell pepper, etc. Why this is? Because this is very feasible. Like if you grow it in the NFT, you can't remove only single plant. If at all it is infected with some or the other disease or some or the other pest, you cannot remove a single plant and throw it away, or keep it away to get okay. And yeah, so this is one of the system where it's very easy to grow the plants. It's very easy to handle the plants. So here the water is pumped up in a drip way into individual pipes and again drained out into a common drainage pipe, and again it gets back to the reservoir. So here also there is a very great water circulating system being used. Next, the aggregate based system, which I already said, it's very similar to soil farming. Why I say this? Because here I'm not going to use soil, but I'm going to use a substrate which can replace my soil. So substrate like cocoa peat, which you can see the person is doing. And the right side, there are such type of grow bags available in market, wherein you have to just, so cocoa peat is something made out of coconut husk, and we usually get it into a compressed cocoa peat block, and once you add in water into it, it hydrates. Like for example, I can say if I get a compressed 5 kg block of cocoa peat, I am going, once I hydrate it, I'm going to get a 25 kg cocoa peat in my hand once I hydrate it. So it's that good in absorbing water. Yeah. So next. Yeah. As I said, cocoa peat is nothing but which is found from coconut husk. So it's organic plant material. Yes, it decomposes. So there is no harm in using it. You can sometimes reuse it also. The pH is neutral. Sometimes the EC is high. So we have to make sure that we get a low EC cocoa peat. It holds on moisture like our soil, like how the soil holds on the water. It similarly holds on the water. It provides very good aeration. But there are some demerits of cocoa peat also. Reusing the cocoa peat, like keeping on reusing the cocoa peat is not going to give a good support to the plant. So basically try using it as a single use only. Second is clay balls. These are just for the support of the plant. They are not going to degrade. They can be used n number of times. I personally use it in my farm for the tomatoes. What I do is fill my cup with the cocoa peat. When my plant is grown up in the cocoa peat, I fill the cup with the cocoa peat, and on the cocoa peat, I add such balls or mix the cocoa peat with these balls. It provides a very good aeration. The pH is neutral, and the best part is it's reusable. So it's just like one-time investment for at least 2 to 3 years. Next. Yeah. So perlite. Sometimes in the farms when we visit, we can see some grow bags mixed with some white color thing, and we wonder whether they are adding urea. No, it's perlite, or it might be perlite also. So perlite is full of minerals. Okay. So, and it is also very light in weight. It also absorbs much of water. And both perlite and vermiculite are not much used, but vermiculite is so almost not used in any like I personally don't use vermiculite because it's very expensive also. And second thing, it's it plays the same role like perlite. So perlite is much cheaper, and perlite is sustainable also. So people prefer using perlite. Second, yeah, rock wool and oasis cubes. So these two things are a substrate where where I'm going to sow my seeds, where the plant, these type of substrates should have a good water holding capacity. So rock wool is not majorly used in India. There are very few people who use rock wool because it's not good for your health, it seems. I have been working with rock wool for some years, and it's actually very, when you come in contact with rock wool, your skin starts burning, your skin starts irritating. That's why people avoid using rock wool, but the germination rate is really very high in rock wool. Next is OSS cube. OSS cubes is very similar to the bouquets. In the bouquets, when you see in the bouquets, you get a green color sponge kind of a thing. That same thing is OSS cubes. So the brown sheet you can see, it's it works like a sponge. The seeds have been sown. The seed, it collects, like it absorbs the water. The OSS cubes absorb the water, and the seed, it's very easy for the seeds to provide the nutrition the water basically, and it's degradable, whereas rock wool is not degradable. Next. So the containers, what are the containers used? First is the net cups. Yes, net cups are used in the NFT systems wherein the plants are being growing. Next is Dutch bucket. Dutch bucket, which I already showed you, Dutch bucket system. So these are individual buckets which are filled with the only clay ball mixture, etc. And this is the sponge. This is one kind of new technique which has been found. So these are the basically sponge, wherein if you have this sponge, you don't actually need to have a cup also. You can just use a sponge and insert and make a hole on the NFT system such that the sponge will get inserted into the system very easily. So this is very feasible and very cheaper option for a container. Next. As I said, the nutrition needs of the plant do not change at all. Okay, so the plant nutrients are the same which are used in the soil. The 16 essential nutrients are the same when it comes to hydroponics also. As far as talking about the carbon dioxide, the hydrogen and oxygen is readily available from the air. So there is no very different kind of a thing which happens in the hydroponics. Yes, people are using 2 and 3 part nutrients, which are A, B or A, B, C type of nutrients. They are not very different. In the next slide, I am going to explain you what is A and what is B. So how are you going to measure the number of nutrients, or how are you going to make sure that my water in which my plants are growing are having nutrition? So there is a meter called electrical conductivity meter, or you can see a EC meter, which is being used to measure the TDS levels, to measure the ppm levels. Okay, so the water which I use in hydroponics, so whatever the water we require in hydroponics, and before adding any nutrition into it, we have to make sure that it is a neutral pH water. It's a soft RO water. So this is a very big demerit that hard water people, like from people who are getting water from the wells, who are getting hard water in their farm, have to have a RO system set up. And only after that, once the water passes the RO system, and when you get a neutral pH water, only then you can use it into the hydroponic system, because the raw and the hard water consist of other heavy metals. So we are making sure that the water is totally plain and without any minerals. So that is the reason, because further we are going to add the nutrition, and if I add nutrition into the hard water, I am not going to get the appropriate EC. Okay, so if my EC is 0.0 of my water, or 0.1 maximum, after that, when I add my nutrition, I can make sure my EC, if I have to make a EC of 1.0 to 1.5, after adding my nutrients, I can make sure, yeah, okay, my plants are going to get the same nutrition which I am adding into the water. But when it comes to hard water, no, you cannot make sure, because already in the hard water, the nutrients are already mentioned. So we cannot use hard water in hydroponics. Next. Yeah, so macro and micronutrients. What are the macronutrients? Everyone must have heard about NPK grades. We have n number of NPK grades in this SEO book. We must have gone through. Many of them are expertise, might be expertise also. Some of them must be of the science background also. So NPK is nothing but nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. So these are the basic needs of the plant. Second, in macro, again, calcium goes in, magnesium goes in, and sulfur goes in. So these are the macronutrients, okay. So these macronutrients are basically present in a larger amount. Whereas in micronutrients, the nutrition present here, boron, nickel, manganese, chlorine, iron, molybdenum, copper, zinc, everything are very, very, very less required for the plant. So these are very, very less amount of nutrients which are required. This is the same 16 essential nutrients which are also required for the plants which grow in soil farming. Next. Yeah. So pH and EC, these are the two major concepts which we have to take care when it comes to doing hydroponics. So what is pH? pH is potential of hydrogen or the hydrogen ions present in my water, the nutrient water. Okay, so pH requirement varies. So the best range of pH you can keep for a healthy growth of plant is 5.5 to 6.5. Okay, every plant or every variety of plant requires a very different kind of pH. But talking about pH, 6.5, 5.5 to 6.5 is the range where we maintain our pH in hydroponic system. So you have to make sure. Also in the soil farming, people try to maintain their soil pH to 5.5 to 6.5. Coming to EC, EC is the measure of amount of salt in water. So the EC meter is used to measure the amount of salts which we have in the nutrition water. EC meters, we get EC meters very easily in the market. Also, we get EC sensors, which are, a part of automation again. So this is a very different topic for sensors and everything. So basically now at a smaller level, at a very small level, people usually do manually checking of the EC through the EC meter. Second, how we maintain the EC. So there are different stages of plant where we have to give the EC, like the nutrition requirement increases as the stage changes. So in vegetative stage, we maintain a EC of 1.0 to 1.5 millisieverts. Then coming to the flowering stage, if the plant is a flowering stage plant, in the flowering stage, we maintain the EC of 2.0 to 2.5, where the nutrient level is very high in the plant, very high in the nutrition. Coming to the fruiting stage, for the maturity, for the fruiting, the plant requires more amount of nutrition as compared to the vegetative, because the fruit size has to develop, the fruit has to develop, the fruit sweetness has to develop. Everything is being taken care when you add the EC, when you measure the EC, or when you take care of the EC to 2.5 to 3.5 millisieverts. Next. You might be worried, how do you measure the pH? How do you measure the pH and adjust the EC? How do you measure the EC? So, right, if you can see in the first photo, how you can see a pH, similar way you get a EC meter. It's just a on-off button. It's just the mode button. You have to just on the EC meter, take a glass of your nutrition solution, dip the meter into the water and check the reading. That's so simple and that's so easy. So these are type of digital pH meters you get in market. These are type of pH, EC meters you get into market. If you can see the range of range of this thing pH. So when I said you the water which I get in whatever water we use for before adding the nutrition should be at the pH of 7. 7 is claimed to be a neutral pH, whereas and 5.5 to 6.5 is the range where we are going to maintain the hydroponic solution. So that goes to a acidic range. Okay. In the second picture, you can see pH strips. If you're going to just start your hydroponic systems in a balcony or in your house, you can get such pH strips with a various ranges. So they have various ranges strips wherein they'll give you a range from 5 to 7 or 4 to 7. So these are the different types of strips you get into the market. We also so how do you adjust your pH? If what I'll do if my pH goes down, what can I do if my pH goes high? So talking about pH adjustment, you get pH up and down solutions in market very easily. But if you do not want to rely on the pH up and down solutions from the market, you can just use NaOH to pH to up your pH, and to down your pH, you can use nitric acid. So these have different measurements. I am not going to explain the measurement, but yes, NaOH and HNO3 are the major. Even I personally use NaOH and HNO3 in my greenhouse in the hydroponic solution. So what are the common pests and how can I manage them? I was saying that I am going to control my plants. I'm going to control them very strictly. I'm going to provide the nutrition. I'm going to provide the environment to them. But frankly speaking, practically speaking, pests do come into the greenhouse. Yes, pests do come into the greenhouse. So how am I going to tackle them? So the worst pest which I can say is the mealybug. It very easily comes into your green in the greenhouse also. But if your greenhouse is very high tech, if your greenhouse is very controlled, yes, you can avoid such kind of pests and diseases. But who are doing a very small scale commercial farm or a very 5,000 square feet or a 2,000 square feet commercial plot, yes, you are going to have such problems. So next part I'll show you. Next slide, please. Yeah. So these mealybugs and aphids, spider mites, leaf miner is one of the biggest problem which comes in palak, spinach, I can say. Caterpillar is one of the leaf eating pest, which usually comes when we grow a brassica family crop, like for kale, if you can say broccoli, cabbage, all this type of crops. When we grow, caterpillar are very easily attracted to such type of crops. So how am I going to tackle? As I said, pesticides we do not use in hydroponics. So what are we going to tackle them with? So neem oil spray is the best spray which I can suggest you guys to use, as adiractin spray. Okay. Again, you can use the garlic oil spray. You can use the sticky traps first before having any plantation in your greenhouse. Make sure you add on the sticky traps so that any flies which come into are going to stick to the sticky traps and not going to harm your plant. Next. Yeah, so these are the photos of different pests. The first one you are seeing, white color, is the mealybug. On the right side, you can see ants. When you see ants, you have to make sure that if you see ants, you should be damn sure that you are going to have mealybugs, because they have a very good friendship between them. When mealybugs start eating the plant, it's a sap sucking pest. When it starts sucking the sap from the plant, it removes some kind of sticky or a sweet nectar kind of a thing, which this ants keep on eating. So this is how the ants will provide protection to the mealybug. So these both come together. The third picture is thrips. The fourth picture is spider mite. Leaf miner, most of them who have done farming must have seen leaf miner is a very big problem. I personally just remove the leaf and throw out. There is no other option to remove this kind of disease. The third one, sixth one you are seeing is the caterpillar, which can eat a whole plant in a night. Yes, it can eat a whole plant in a night. It's that difficult to handle. Next slide. So, wondering what all can be grown. Yes, you might be thinking what all can I grow in this? So yes, you can grow everything except the cash crop. I personally haven't tried cash crops. So there are people from Japan, there are people from China who are growing rice in hydroponics, who are growing wheat in hydroponics. But I've personally done farming with this mentioned 9 crops. Yes, you can grow parsley very, very, very easily, and the production is really very nice. It grows really very faster. Basil is one of the easiest crop you can start with. It is one of the easiest. Yes, it is one of the easiest herb you can say. All these herbs, amongst all these herbs, the basil is the best you can start if you want to try hydroponics. Okay. Mint comes out from a cutting. If you have a cutting of a soil grown mint also, you can just root it and put it into one of the NFT systems or any cocoa peat based system. It grows so nicely. It grows really very nicely. Coriander, rosemary, you can have. All these exotic herbs are very easily grown in the hydroponics. Next. Leafy vegetables. So I am not limited to exotic plants, frankly speaking. Indian crops like palak, like amaranth, beetroot, beetroot greens, I can say, mustard greens, I can say, spring onion greens, I can say. All these plants can also be grown in hydroponics. It's not very limited, but people do not use this kind of expensive systems to grow whatever is very easily available in soil. So these are the systems these are the crops which are avoided by the people because there is not much market value, and these are very easily available. So people move out to exotic vegetables like lettuce. In lettuce, we have n number of varieties. Majorly grown are the iceberg. Iceberg you can grow only if you can maintain your water temperature, only if you can maintain your environment to 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. Only then you can grow some type of iceberg lettuce. You can grow easily the butterhead lettuce. You can grow easily this romaine lettuce. They grow really, really very nice. Next is kale. Kale is also one of the brassica family. So caterpillars are very, very nicely attracted to this kind of vegetable. So you have to take the utmost care when you are growing kale. Pok choy is one of the leafy vegetables which is in a great demand. It also has a very good weight. So once you grow pok choy, you can get a very good weight for the crop, and you can sell it in a very good price. Swiss chard is nothing but spinach. It's a different variety of spinach, I can say. It's very similar to spinach, but it's very colorful, I can say. You get rainbow color Swiss chard also. Next. So fruits and vegetables, wondering if I can grow fruit. Yes, you can grow fruits like strawberries. Now people have started growing blueberries. Tomatoes is one kind of a fruit which has been grown drastically. There is one big variety, very majorly used to get a good quantity of produce is the beef stick variety of tomatoes. Again, you can grow nice broccoli, cauliflower, cucumber varieties are there. Cucumber, salad cucumbers, and n varieties of cucumbers you can grow. So basically, I'm talking about the fruits and vegetables. All these vegetables and fruits go into a cocoa peat based system or a Dutch bucket based system because, as I already explained, it's very easy to handle them. Cabbage, The green cabbage and the red cabbage, the exotic ones, can easily be grown in hydroponics. Musk melon is one of the best, I can say, can be grown in hydroponics. I myself have tried musk melon and it is growing really very well. Bell pepper and eggplant also can be grown. Don't worry. Bell pepper, the colored ones, the colored capsicum also can be grown in hydroponics. Next. Yeah. So you must be worrying, it's very expensive. How expensive it is? So I'm giving a short example, a very short example about the economics of the, how it works. So if I'm talking about an area of an acre of a land, okay. So all these calculations which I have done will vary from crop to crop, will vary from region to region, will vary from system to system. There are very n number, like I can combine a Dutch bucket with a grow bag, grow bag system also. I can combine an NFT system with a raft system also. So it all depends on what type of system you are choosing, and the system is selected on what type of crop you are using, and where, and the crop is selected on the market you have. Okay, so it is all interlinked. Once you have the market, you know the market demand, you can easily select the crop. Once you select the crop, you can select the system, and once you select the system, you can know what price you're going to have or what is the costing for my farm. So talking about an acre, it will easily cost you not more than a crore. Frankly speaking, I'm practically saying yes, hydroponics is very expensive, but you can do it smartly. You can do it in a very low cost also. Monthly yield for tomatoes. So monthly yield of tomatoes goes to 70 to 90 kg per square meter. Utkarsh, I cannot see the screen. Hello, Utkarsha. Ishani is there?
Yes, ma'am, just a minute.
Yes,
Yeah.
just a minute.
Some
Shani,
problem,
you can
Ishani.
ask the questions.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay. Ma'am, thank you so much for this wonderful and a very informative presentation on hydroponics. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, there are a few questions put forward. May I read them to you, ma'am? Yes, ma'am. I'm the first. Ma'am, you're not audible. Your mic is working. Ma'am?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the first question is, are there any waterborne disease in hydroponic system?
Yes. There are waterborne diseases, like you can have root rot. Root rot is one of the major problems, one of the major waterborne disease in the hydroponics. Yes, you get waterborne diseases also.
The second question is there any difference between the nutritional qualities of crops grown in hydroponics and traditionally?
Yes, there is a nutrition difference. Talking about palak I am talking because it's very easy to grow. So if I grow a palak, for say today I'm sowing the palak in soil and today I'm germinating the palak for hydroponic system. Definitely my hydroponic germination technique is going to germinate very easily because it is readily getting the water. Okay. So your first point is take that the nutrition is readily available. Second, here in soil when I'm sowing the seeds, first the water should I have to make available the water very correctly to the seeds because if I forget to water the seeds, my seeds are not going to germinate. Here I'm going to have a system such that there is only water in it. So here there I'm making sure my germination is on time. Second, talking about the nutrition, when as I already said, I'm going to spoon feed the nutrition to the plant. So absolutely, for example, if I give you a small example of a baby and a grown-up child also, why do we spoon feed the food to the child and why not to the growing child? It's basically spoon feeding will make sure that my child is growing very nicely. Spoon feeding is going to make sure that my child is getting the healthiest food. But spoon feeding you don't do the to the grown up kid. But once in case you are doing a spoon feeding to the grown up kid, but you're in soil, if I compare this with soil and hydroponics, so your spoon feeding is the only key reason where the nutrition level of the plant when it is grown in soil is less and when it is grown in hydroponics is high. So spoon feeding the nutrition is the only reason where my nutrition level is going to be at a higher level. When I do analysis also, I have done a research paper wherein I have analyzed what amount of iron is present in spinach, what amount of iron is present in a spinach grown in soil and hydroponics. So definitely iron will come higher because it has eaten more iron than the soil.
Yes, ma'am. And ma'am, the third question is, do farmers need to go for any certification process in hydroponics farming?
As I said, hydroponics, now that YouTube is so in demand, on YouTube you can see n number of videos for hydroponics, but seeing videos and practically doing hydroponic farming is very, very, very different. You have to do n number of changes, n number of even what we have learned in our education system, like whatever we have learned in the hydroponic course is very different what we do in practically in the greenhouse. So yes, you need to have a hands-on practice. You need to, before starting any commercial farm, I can say, before starting any commercial farm, try to make yourself trained for hydroponics. You can get n number of trainings available online also and on field also. We at Aries Agro give training to people. We have a greenhouse setup arranged on our terrace top. We provide proper orientation for the greenhouse, how you can see how systems are working, you can see how the plants are growing. So we at Aries Agro also give training to such kind of people who are trying to start their hydroponic farms, or you have are keen to know what hydroponics is.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, the fourth question is, how much initial cost is required to set up a hydroponics unit?
See, if you're talking about a commercial setup, as I already have given you a 1 acre example, so 1 acre cost will go around crore or more, and it all depends on what type of system you select. So all this requires a proper calculation, all this requires a proper proposal, all this requires a proper market survey, and then only you can come to a consideration that okay, I'm going to have a farm this much big, or 1 acre is a big area to start with. to get on a hands-on practice, you can start with some kind of coco peat, at least a coco peat based systems in your backyard or in your greenhouse. You can build your own NFT systems, like I've shown in the pictures also. Some type of short and small systems also are easily available now in the market, where you can start growing in hydroponics.
And ma'am, the last question. Are there any government schemes and subsidiaries available for setting up a hydroponics unit?
Okay. So talking about subsidies, subsidies are not available for hydroponic systems, as it is not yet into government much known amongst the government. But yes, you get a subsidy for building a greenhouse. There are some percentage or something related to type of greenhouse you select. So you get subsidies for the greenhouse which you will build, but you cannot get a subsidy for the system cost you have to bear on yourself. And the turnover, if I talk about the turnover or the ROI, it's minimum 3 to 4 years. After 3 to 4 years, only you are going to get your ROI or the turnover.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a very lovely presentation. Thank you so much for coming and giving your valuable time to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishani. And I would like to thank Dr. Utkarsha for giving me this opportunity to present on a very big platform. And thank you, Just Agriculture, the magazine. And yeah, lovely talking to you guys. Thank you for attending my lecture. And yeah, stay safe and keep growing.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
I thank all the participants for coming to this wonderful session, the day 2 session of today, and I conclude this session for today. Thank you. You may leave.